Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here with Hudson. Hudson, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everyone. What is it like to be you?
Oh, to be me. I knew you were gonna ask that, and I like still couldn't figure out the answer. I even like wrote about it, and I was like, I have no idea. It's a lot. I have I mean, I guess so. I have BPD, and I noticed that I kind of like we talk about the chameleon thing. I fit in everywhere, so I feel like I wouldn't say a lot of different people, but I feel a lot. Um, it's very confusing sometimes. Sometimes it's really fun. I notice it most when I'm alone. It kind of that like sense of like who I am is kind of like I'm searching for something. I never quite find it. Um, so I don't know. I guess it can be difficult and it can be cool. Um, what about you?
I love that. I'll answer it in a hot second. I love that that's so insightful that you feel it the most when you're alone. That's so interesting because I feel like so I was just reading too a really old comment like on my blog like from 2 or 3 years ago. It got stuck in the spam and then I was just kind of for whatever reason bored and like going through the spam folder and it said something like, the most common attribute of psychopaths actually is boredom, this persistent boredom. And I think that that too is kind of like, just so true. But what it reminded me because you mostly experience it when you're alone. Like if you have, things going on and busy or people around you that you have projects with these people, whatever you're using them for, why ever they're in your life, so you have all this kind of engagement. And as long as you're engaged that way, it's fine. But then the boredom, when you don't have those things is like that's what it feels to be alone, I guess, is like it feels like boredom. And, my girlfriend feels it worse than I do. I think she will even feel anxiety about the possibility that she's going to experience the boredom. She'll be like, I
Oh my
can't
god.
let yeah, like I
Oh
can't
my
let
god.
everything slow down too bad because then I risk the boredom. So it's like she'll do all sorts of stuff to, like to avoid even getting close to the border of boredom.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought of it as boredom, but it could absolutely be that. I mean, it's whatever it is, it's very uncomfortable.
Yes, it is very uncomfortable.
Um, one of the things I actually wanted to ask, it was really, really interesting to me, is because I do a ton of art. I've actually listened to, and I went through most of your book. I didn't quite finish it. And then I've listened to a lot of these interviews, and I didn't really hear anyone ask much about like, do you have like a taste in art and music? Do you have things you like more than others? Like,
Yes. It's such a good question. So I will say my I'm not like as up on visual art, but although I do have a friend who like majored in art history. So, it's good to like kind of whatever learn from her and stuff. But the art, my two favorite visual artists are Mondrian.
okay, never heard of them.
Yeah. That Dutch painter, he does like the yellow, blue, red, kind of like just squares and like
Oh,
black hashes.
yep, yep,
Huh.
yep, yep, yep. Okay, now I know who
But
you're talking about.
yeah, he also has a series though that are just a bunch of trees, like leafless trees that are really awesome. So I like Mondrian, and I also like this one probably too. You have never heard of is Giotto. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
He was like right like pre-Renaissance. He was kind of like famous for having kind of reinvented perspective painting, like
Oh,
painting in
okay.
3D. Yes.
Mhm.
People, there's like a quote about him where it's like, there are a couple quotes. One of them is like, oh, I went to go like smash a fly that was on the painting until I realized it was the painting.
Oh,
Now, I don't believe that one actually happened, but they're trying to say, like it was so confusing. It actually reminds me of I think this is a true story. One of the first films was of a train entering the station, and apparently the how the story goes is that when people saw it, they watched it. They were so freaked out by it that they like ran away. They're like, "Oh no, the train's gonna run into us," because they didn't have like any conception
oh,
that yeah, the
oh, yeah.
film, yeah, it's
That's I could. I mean, it makes sense. I could see that. I could see
Yes.
that.
So there are a
So,
couple other quotes about Giotto being like, okay, he had he was able to like paint like your eye sees or something. And I guess that was like now it kind of seems weird to us. Like, everybody like learns this in like, third grade or
they draw
whatever.
a little square, that little
Yeah,
square knows how to draw a little 3D one. Yeah.
exactly. But like in his era though, he was the only one doing it. But my one of my favorite things about him are the expressions on people's faces. And especially like there's one where it's one of my favorite where it's in the Scrovigny Chapel in Padua, and it's like the life of Christ in frescoes all along the walls, and it has Jesus. After he's crucified, he's lying there dead, and these angels, they're like eight angels, and like these angels are just like losing their ever loving mind. They're just like so
Oh, wow.
sad. You can see in their little faces that they're just like so torn up about it. And you think, wow, Joto, that's right. I don't know why I like him so much.
Okay. Okay. So, and I guess I asked that because, and then correct me if I'm wrong here, but like you have not none, but a very, very like low level of emotions. Is that
I would,
somewhat true or no?
I would say it's kind of like this. Um, I traditionally have felt like the emotions, but like kind of out of context, out of meaning, and mostly like the physical sensation. So
Okay.
again, I'll use an example from my girlfriend. She went to under it wasn't court ordered therapy, but it was something close to it. So the therapist suggested she go to the seminar, kind of like a group therapy or something, where it's about identifying emotions. And on, the 3x5 card, you had to like write three emotions that you know that you feel. You can recognize when you feel. And then on the other side, three emotions that you sometimes think you might be feeling, but you're not sure. And so like on the front side, she says something like angry, hungry, tired, or
Yeah.
something.
No, I mean, 100%, I mean, and those things affect your mood too. Sometimes
Yeah.
when I'm in a shitty mood, I'm like, am I tired? Am I
Hmm.
hungry? And then half the time it's like, oh, I needed to eat lunch.
Yeah.
All of a sudden everything's fine. What's interesting is, and we'll kind of get into this more, but I had done some therapy when I was younger, and I got to see a psychosomatic therapist. So a lot of it was like mind body.
Ooh,
Um, so we did a lot of talk therapy, but like one of the things I kind of learned was like, for anxiety, he's like, well, what is that? Where do you feel anxiety? And like distinctly, it's like in my stomach.
oh,
The butterfly.
really?
Yeah, I feel it. Maybe even my stomach gets a little bit tight, or it gets a little, I wouldn't say nauseous, but butterflies. That's the only way I can describe it. Very weird sensation, a lot of tension in my stomach. Um, and I noticed it's the exact same physical feeling as excitement. So when I'm excited
Really?
about something, yeah. So I'm getting ready to go over the edge of the roller coaster. You go, woo, and you go down, and then woof, and then you get that kind of release, and you're having fun. You get that adrenaline. And then when I'm anxious, it's the exact same feeling with negative context.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, oh, I'm about to, I did no chores and slacked off, and my wife just worked all day. Oh man, and I'm not home to do it. Like, oh boy. And so I'll feel
Uh-huh.
anxious because I know she'll be upset, and I know I could have done it. But similar feeling to the roller coaster, especially for me. My emotions are pretty intense. So, but I don't know. Do
So
you have a physical sensation of those, like anxiety or excitement or anything like that? I know you ski.
yes, yes. So I ski and I love roller coasters. So like one thing that I do sometimes get, like if I'm kind of like oh no, what's gonna happen here or something, kind of an oh no feeling. Like I get like a sour taste in my mouth is sometimes how I like recognize it. Or if I'm nervous, I can have like, like little like handshakes or something, like I'm speaking in public or I'm in a courtroom or something, and so I'm nervous because I'm in front, everyone's watching me. I'm trying to like communicate, like and to
Yeah.
I guess kind of perform the way I want to. I think of it that way because I was like a music major. So I've gotten a little bit better at recognizing things. Actually, meditation has helped, because at least the guided meditation that I use, he'll often have things like, trying to exactly what you're saying, trying to feel where you're feeling things. So he's like, how does it feel when you feel nervous? Where do you feel it? How does it feel it? Not in all the same meditation, but like in kind of multiple different meditations. In one, he's like, talk to yourself, say your own name. And it's like, where did you hear that? Where where in your body did you
Yeah.
hear you talking to yourself? And I think that sort of stuff is like really good because I used to be very disconnected, I would say, from my body. That's why I thought it's so interesting that you're doing this whatever you use something somatic kind of therapy is because you like all these things exist, you just have to kind of bring your attention to them, and I guess that's a good way to kind of say that was how I experienced my emotions too. They existed, I just didn't have like my attention on them. They were kind of like running in the background processes of like a CPU, like a computer or something. Like
Some
they're not
ambient
on.
noise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not on the screen that I'm looking at. They're like in the back. They're hidden behind multiple windows, multiple tabs or something. Right? But they're still there. They're still running. In fact, does this ever happen to you? Sometimes you're like, "Where's that noise coming from?" And it's like a tab is open that's playing some like noise, but you're not even sure where it is. That's kind of how it
Yeah.
was. Like, where is this noise coming from? Like, why do I feel this way? Where is it coming from? And then you don't know it. Like, it's not as automatic. It's more of like a treasure hunt.
You know, I, I'm not going to say I've had the same experience, but that makes me think of when I was younger. I didn't really. No one talked about emotions, so there wasn't. I didn't really have names for the things I was feeling, and I didn't have an adult who could kind of reflect that back to me and be like,
Mm,
"Oh, that sounds like X, Y, or Z." Um, so like I had severe anxiety, no word for it. I was just
yeah.
always kind of on edge and like quick to anger. And I had the thought that like, man, why is everyone such an asshole? Like, why don't you guys just, you know what I mean? I was very, very angry. And I mean, I wasn't till my mid 20s to like figure out that, oh, I'm just horrifically anxious all the time. And I'm really, really sensitive. So
Yeah.
like, and like I kind of think in society there's a bit of a role where it's more appropriate for males to express anger. So when I did it, it was just like, oh, he's an angry, like, you know what I mean? It was never a big deal that I would get angry. Never, no one, people would like calm me down, but we never had to like get to the root of it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, yeah, for a long time, that's just how I expressed it. And I was so flighty and I moved a lot, a lot. I never really had to face the music
You mean you move, like, physically, like, you'd move cities or yeah.
a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Up and down the West Coast. I lived in California most of my life.
Mhm.
Uh, I grew up like East Bay area and eventually moved to Southern California for a while. It's cool stuff, but we'll get into moving later. But where were we? Had a brain
About
fart.
emotions. And and
Oh,
you felt anxiety, but you never had the word for it, and so you expressed it as anger.
yeah, exactly. So I didn't have any language for it, so I could never really address it properly.
Mm.
Um, so what brought us to that? Just talking about feelings and having a brain fart.
The
Um,
somatic, like,
yeah,
therapy?
that's been super helpful. I did it for a few years. However, at the time I was on drugs. I had a pretty bad
Okay.
drug addiction. Yeah. Um, Actually, if you don't mind, we should kind of set up a little brief timeline because there's a lot of shit I've done. Are you want to go down that? Is that fine?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. So I have done a lot of therapy around this stuff, so I'm pretty comfortable talking about it. So when I was younger, I lived with my mom for about 5 years or so. Never met my biological dad. She got married to this guy, had two kids, but one, we'll get into that a little bit later. But she had a kid with him, had my brothers. And then she bounced. She left when I was like 6.5.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. And then she got on painkillers. Like she basically, like the doctor was the drug dealer. I don't know if she got into an injury or I don't know exactly what happened, but after she did that, I think it was, I want to say 13 to 16. My memory is a little off. It was 13 to 16 years where she was just on that, absent, totally unavailable. And she left me with my stepdad, which wasn't good because as soon as she moved out, he started molesting me. And so that happened
Mm.
from like 6 to 13, because about 13 was when I was big enough to kind of be like, stay away. And my sexual identity was starting to develop. So I knew like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't what I want to do, which was really hard to kind of rack my brain, like figure that out, because at the time it didn't feel wrong. When you're a little kid, you have no concept. And this is my caregiver. It wasn't violent. He didn't like beat me. There was no physical, like, no hitting, no screaming or anything like that. But the way things were presented, it wasn't presented in an ugly way or an abusive way. I was kind of like led to believe like this is normal, this is okay, this is what dads do with their kids. Is really twisted. But around 13, that stopped happening to me. There was no contact. But I know that at some point during that, he had started putting cameras in the room. I'd started seeing like a video camera or tape recorder over here, over there. And like I would like cover him up, and that part of my memory is a little foggy because there's a lot of trauma. So memory's not reliable at all. So I'm trying to stick to what I know. But I always suspected there were more cameras because he had a lock on the inside of his bedroom door. And anytime I would go to use the restroom, he would pop into the room and then pop back out. And I'm like, there's something going on here. And I would look and look and look, never found anything. Around when I was 18, one time he went in, did the thing, came back out. I didn't go to the bathroom. I heard him close the garage door. So I run in, open the door, and his door wasn't locked. He forgot to lock it. And I pop it open, and there's a laptop with a live feed through like the little fan above the thing. You can see like the whole bathroom. Mm-hmm. I was, just adrenaline. I remember running out into the garage. I like grabbed his like chest muscles and like picked him up and threw him on the ground. Got real in his face and started like screaming at him, yelling. I don't even know what I said. I was just enraged. Called my mom. This was kind of the first time she had come back in the picture in any meaningful way. I called her and I was like, hey, Mike's been molesting me for years. I found a laptop, feed into the bathroom, come get Christopher and Matthew. And she drove down from out of state and was down in like, 12 hours or something like that, had him out. Keeping in mind, and this part's hard, and I think it's kind of important to say is like, this person was also my caregiver, so a lot of the good qualities I got, like he wasn't a horrible, it's weird, it's hard to say. He did that. That's not okay. Mm-hmm. There's no defense for that. The impact he had on the community around him was positive. Yeah. So his outer projection was very helpful. He did very helpful things for people. And I learned a lot of good qualities too, which is, it's hard to reconcile with. Here's this person that did this horrible thing and I hate them. And society would be like, yeah, we hate that guy. Like, don't let me get my hands on him. Like, I've heard that so much, and that's hard because it's like, well, I also have part of me loves him. Yeah. And that's probably never going to change. Therapy helped kind of reconcile with that. You can have that. Keep going back to the timeline. So, yeah, my mom came back, picked them up. I had done drugs the whole time. He had kind of fed me drugs around my teens. I was getting really, really angry, getting in a lot of fights. I got kicked out of school from like 4th grade all the way to like freshman year high school. Kicked out every other day, sent home. Very violent. And then, yeah, we found out alcohol kind of chilled me out a little bit. So he would just buy me bottles. I had bottles. I left school freshman year. I was like 15. Stopped going. I never went back to school. So yeah, and he kind of just let all that stuff happen and like kind of encouraged it, because if he could keep me kind of quiet, that worked for him, because he was noticing that like, hey, he knows something's wrong. He's lashing out. Let's keep him like sedated, you know? So I brought all that up because when I got a hold of that laptop, I didn't go to the police immediately. I actually, some person I'd met like 2 days before, I told them what happened, and they're like, we have an extra room, just move in. And so I left the house. It took me about a week before I went to the police station, because it was just like, I took a ton of like painkillers and stuff, just numbed myself out as much as I could. And just, you know, I had to land on it. I'm like, look, maybe I can't do it for myself. He might be hurting someone else.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to, that's how I got myself to do it, was the idea that someone else would be abused. And so I went in. It was kind of a trip too, because they, you know, with it not being my laptop, they like needed a warrant. So like I had to do this. You might actually know what it's called. I think they think he said pretext phone call. Is that a thing you've heard of?
No.
Basically the call where I got to get him to like admit to things so they can get the warrant, which was like, but I think my BPD might have helped out a little bit, where my personality is kind of amorphous. I can just like become the thing I need to be for the situation. So it went really smooth. Like it took about 3 minutes. I'm like, hey, I'll give you the laptop, but like, why did you do these things to me? Like, what were you trying to do? And he's like, well, and it's some crazy fucking something about teaching me like how to, it didn't make sense. I couldn't understand it. It didn't make any sense. And he just kind of used this laptop as leverage and was like, look, I'll give it to you, man, but you got to tell me more about it. Like, what were you trying to teach me? Why were you trying to teach me that? Is this something that happened to you? Which I actually found out on that phone call. That's what happened to him, you know, with his mom being in so many marriages. A lot of his stepdads did stuff to him, you know, neighbors that he lived by. Like it happened to him a lot. But he said for him, it was the only time he ever felt loved. You know, he felt like his mom hated him and was cold and just awful. And the only time anybody was kind to him when he was young was in that context, you know. And I found that out on that phone call, and I'm just like you found a really bad way to handle that. But like, damn, like you're abused too. You know, you're not just an evil monster, you're also a victim, you know. And it's unfortunate that instead of getting any kind of help, like somehow you wound up here. Whatever decisions were made, whatever your environment was, you ended up here, you know. I feel like I'm going off the timeline here. Bear with me. Do you remember?
Well, so you said, you know, you moved in 18 or whatever, you got the laptop, you moved in with some other people, if it were going off the timeline. But I mean, I agree with you about all these things. Like, you know, my dad, if you read the book, like he's kind of a monster guy, but I think some people are surprised to hear that like we're fine right now. We're friends. We go on family vacations. It's
Yeah.
because he had like way worse stuff happen to him than he ever even did to me, you know. So it's kind of like easy to just be like, okay, like, of course you would kind of end up this way, you know, like how destabilizing that must have been to him, you know, to experience all the things that he did experience, which doesn't justify his behavior, but it explains it. And you can kind of, you said earlier, you know, like, how can you love somebody and kind of hate them at the same time? But I think it's possible. It's easy at least to hate the things that they did to you, or it's easy for me to still hate the things that he did to me and think, okay, to a large extent, you're the reason why I'm a psychopath. You know, like that's a big deal. I've had to like struggle with this, like, you know, all of my life, but to also kind of think, you know, it's a little bit like these people who are like married to people, you know, that turn out to be kind of let's use the word monsters, even though I don't really think people are monsters, but married to a monster. And then they say, well, that was a mistake to marry your dad or mom or whatever, but at least I got you kids out of it. And I guess I feel that way, but not in this way that I don't feel pressured to think, I have to make the best of this. I feel like there just is kind of a silver lining to it. It would be stupid to not recognize it, or I would feel like I'm not, like, seeing reality for what it is, because there are certain parts about even being a psychopath that have been really helpful for me, that have like, if I wasn't a psychopath, I don't think I would have been so ultimately crazy about kind of, like, self-actualization, and, like, living my own truth. I think because I was a psychopath and I never lived my own truth, that I've almost swung to the opposite and think this is the most important thing about life. I don't know that I would have done that if I hadn't experienced all those things.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think in a lot of ways too, like those experiences like have definitely shaped me. I mean, I've had such like, how would I put it? Really, really traumatic things, really, really low quality of life, and having gone from what I feel like is a pretty low place up to these really, really high places in my life where I feel really good overall. There's a sense of like, I don't want to, fulfillment kind of,
Yeah.
but it's like, I just generally, when I think about the things I've done in the past few years, I don't hate myself for it. That wasn't always the case. But I think like, it's one of those things. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I wouldn't be myself. Um, but um,
But I also feel the say, just like pause, because I don't want anyone to feel pressure to find a silver lining. Like if there is no silver lining to your situation, maybe there's not. I don't think it's necessarily true that there's always a silver lining. So just because say, okay, I'm okay with it, doesn't mean anybody else has to be okay with it.
right,
There's
right,
like, I don't want to like imply that, you know, there's any sort of pressure that that's where you have to be right now or anything. I just think that everybody's situation is kind of unique to them, and just the way that I've kind of understood it my own self, like right now, who knows, maybe my understanding is going to evolve even further. But I guess I'm just saying I relate to you.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and like finding the silver, it's almost like if you can't, it's almost like a missed opportunity, because it's like I do like there's this saying, either you win or you learn,
Hmm.
which I really like. Like you only lose if you didn't learn anything from whatever happened, because it has taught me valuable lessons, and I've grown a ton from it, and it's changed the way I've approached relationships, because I've had such a damaged way of doing it, that like now I'm learning all the healthy ways to do it, which I think people who can kind of get by might not need to take that step to learn healthy. Like they kind of just get by. They're not, super problematic in their relationships. There might not also be like stellar, but because I've had such poor performance in the relationships and not been the person that I really wanted to be, I'm like learning all the right stuff, and I'm swinging way over to the other side. I feel like, um, which I don't know, in a way feels kind of like a superpower. Feels cool. I'm learning a lot, making like really noticeable changes pretty regularly. It's just been this steady like upward trend the past few years, which is super cool, super cool. Um, so yeah, after all that stuff happened, there was a kind of a period, a few years, 4 or 5 years of a fallout with drugs, because like I got put in a situation where my stepdad's dad, my step grandpa, he hadn't done anything, and he'd only ever really been supportive of me. And so my mom went back to drugs, and so he kind of took me in.
Mm.
But he also doesn't really like know emotions. I don't really know. He's got something. I don't know what it is, but like he can't address emotions. You can't talk about it. Just like no, 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 and like he won't talk about himself ever. I've known him my whole life, never. So, but he cares. He doesn't like seeing me like do poorly, so he's always tried to help. I lived with him, but he's also an enabler, you know. So when I would say, "Hey, I need money," I would basically extort money out of him. I'd be like, "I need, you know, cigarettes or gas," and you know, "Oh, they didn't give me enough hours at work. I need to make up some excuse for drugs," you know. And he would kind of not question it, you know. So it was like I could kind of feed off him, and which was super destructive because, like, you know, in the back of my head, I know, like, man, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, I'm extorting him, and at the same time, I love him, but like the behavior I'm doing doesn't reflect that, you know.
Right.
So there's a lot of guilt associated with it, and then to get over that, you do more drugs, and the more drugs you do, the more is very negative feedback loop. So finally, I was able to get out of that. I did. I moved on from like alcohol and that stuff to methamphetamine, which you talk about silver linings, really thankful for, because it went, quality of life went down so fast. I got into treatment really quick, you know. So whereas like with alcohol, I was just, nothing was going to change. Nothing was going to change. But meth, it got really dark really fast. And so I bailed, which I'm really grateful for, especially considering family history. Everybody's been a drug addict. You know, even my stepdad was on meth. So,
Yeah.
you know, so it was just all around. So after that, I got into treatment. I met my wife, and she's from the Midwest. So we stayed in California for a while. I lived in Orange County. But with her being out of state, she was trying to go back to college. Fullerton was like not letting people in from out of state. They were like, we're pretty much full with like is residential? No. What are the
Yeah.
in-state students called? Residential?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
residents or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, residents, state residents. So they all took priority. And even then, everyone was on a big waiting list. It took 9 months for them to tell her, nah. And then she called the college out here, and they were like, oh, yeah, you're in. And they're like, but you might not qualify for residency. And so she went, I admire her for this, but she went and got every piece of paperwork that said she lived in this state, all the way back to the little thing in the paper that said so and so was born on this day. Like she scanned that and sent it to them, and they're like, okay, we'll give you the price for us. Saved her like $5,000. I was like,
Yeah.
you're impressive. A lot of people
Good
wouldn't
for
have thought
her.
that. Yeah. Anyway, so it brought us out to where we're at now. Getting out of the environments I was in, getting out of the state, getting out of just everything I was used to, it's pretty helpful. You know, I used to go to AA, and they were like, "Yeah, you can change things, but you're going to bring all your baggage with you." And that didn't happen for me. You know, it didn't happen. I moved, and it has been beautiful. Life has been. I've had space. It's more affordable in the Midwest. Like, I didn't go to college. I don't have like a degree in anything like that. So, um, California's expensive. I feel like you need to have a pretty valuable skill or live kind of on the outskirts it's expensive. It's hard to live
Yeah.
out there. So yeah, we were paying like $3,000 a month for, not $3,000. We were paying 1,200. The apartment was like $3,000 a month. We were just getting a room.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and I got a house and the mortgage is like $600. And I tell my friends that, and they get so mad. They'll hang up on me. I'm just like, move out here. And I don't know. Have you ever lived in the Midwest?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I went to law school in the Midwest.
Did you like it? What did you think?
Well, so it's an interesting question because it's just was so different for me. Like I went to undergrad at BYU in Utah, right? And I had like snow jackets and stuff, and I took a skiing class. Like I know how to dress for skiing, I guess. And so that's how I started dressing for law school. I'd show up with all these layers, and then I'd roll up the class and be taking off a jacket, then taking off an outer jacket or inner jacket, and then taking off a sweater. And then I'd be wearing like thermal underwear, and my classmates were like, "What is up with you?" Like I'd have like
I
this
thermaled
pile of
on.
clothes because I just didn't know there was something called a coat. Like I didn't even have that word in my vocabulary, and you definitely can't even buy it. Like at least where I'm from, you couldn't buy a coat. They don't sell them here or something. It's never like cold enough. And so you finally, I think my second year, I actually found one in Goodwill in Southern California. I found a coat that like worked and I wore it the rest of the time or whatever. But yeah, I liked it. You know, the one thing about the Midwest that's kind of funny to me is that like where I was, at least the winter, it can be like 6, 7 months, kind of like it can snow at least for 6 or 7 months. I consider that winter.
Yeah.
And but when it got to like summer, there was almost like a collective amnesia about it. Like it never happened. Almost like people are living like two separate lives, winter lives and non-winter
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, it's traumatic. We're all just trying to compartmentalize and put it. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
a dark time. I don't know. I winter's okay. I like it because it makes me appreciate the warm weather. When I was in California, I didn't appreciate it enough.
Mm-mm.
We lived. I don't know if you know where San Juan Capistrano is.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, we lived right across the street from Capo Beach, so we could walk there, and I never did. I maybe twice.
Really?
Yeah, it was wasted on me. I made space for someone who probably appreciated more.
Yeah,
You know,
hopefully.
because yeah, no, out here I like it. There's a lot of elbow room too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we made the move out here. Life's been getting better. I did start to see that after sobriety, I've noticed like there's this thing where for like the first year, if you're pretty set on it, you don't feel shaky like you're going to relapse or anything, people kind of feel invincible.
Mm,
They're like, I made it out of this. This is just anything that could happen right now is better than the best thing that could have happened when I was on drugs.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like they're just invincible until, life carries on, you start getting more relationships, more responsibilities, and some of the mental health issues start to show, like in a year, like you might be able to keep the job the whole year, but what happens if like every 2 years you quit your job and you
Yeah.
can't really get and you change the career entirely, and like maybe that makes it hard in the future to get things, or makes it hard to find something that would pay more, it's not progressive. And so like for me it took a while to start seeing that. um and then I really really was committed to the relationship I got into. I kind of made a decision in myself. I'm like, I really love this person, I care about them. They've overall shown that by my standards they're a good person. Like maybe they're an asshole sometimes, that's fine. It's just the fact that like when it comes time to do the right thing they do it.
Mhm.
When they're going to do something they do it. There's integrity, there's love, there's just goodwill. So I'm like, that's really everything I need. That's what I really really want, is just knowing that like our values kind of align. And then I think any of the personality stuff we can work on. But my shit started coming out, and like I started to get really you see those like highs and lows of the emotions, where I'm in one day I've gone from like rage down to like I'm laughing to like now I want to cuddle, and then I'm mad again. And it's like, my wife's like, what do I do? Is this me? Am I a terrible person? Or because you make me feel like a terrible person, I feel like I'm doing all this to you. And sometimes it's like I'll think that she is. Not
Yeah.
anymore, but early on in the relationship, I really did think it was the people around me. I had a hard time seeing that I was the common denominator. I'm like, why can't you guys just like chill out? You're always upset at me about something and I'm just having a good time. Why are you so mad?
Mhm.
Have you had that?
Yeah, so I actually kind of think uh I think I've used this kind of analogy before. Maybe this is going to be like interesting or maybe not. I feel like if like let's say you're kind of water skiing or something, and the boat is like your identity, your sense of self. And if you're in the driver's seat, that's like a normal person. Feels like they're in the driver's seat. They have like not control over their sense of self. I'm not trying to say that they're, like whatever Sam Harris free will or something, but that there's a connection there. There's like a good relationship there, a good kind of like awareness of, and there is some control over what's happening, right? And then I like to think of personality disorders, they're not in the driver's seat, right? And then depending on like where you are, kind of is like what personality disorder that you have. And so I think of, like, for instance, a psychopath is so outside of the driver's seat. He's maybe like way along the rope at the very end of the rope. So the boat could be doing all sorts of stuff, your emotions or whatever, but you're just so disconnected that it does affect you, you know,
Yeah.
but it affects you in such like a tangential way that like the boat, could be like veering hard left or something, but then veer right. And then you wouldn't notice it at all. Or maybe there'd be like a little jerk on the rope or something. And I think of like borderline personality disorder, having not experienced it though, I think of it as like you're outside the driver's seat. It's almost like you're hanging on the back of the boat, right? So
Yeah.
you feel all the movement of the boat, but you're not in control. And like what a crazy experience that must be. But I also kind of think as kind of like a psychopath, let's say a psychopath is trying to get into the driver's seat, is trying to like finally have like a normal sense of identity, sense of self, right? There's a point at which the sociopath is also hanging off the back of the boat, right? Because as
Yeah.
you're like climbing
Yeah.
up the rope, you're there. And kind of the time period for which that like how long that lasts, I think depends, because I've seen kind of psychopaths do this now, not a ton of times, honestly. And so I hesitate to say, but I think it's an interesting concept. There needs to be more research about it. But I've seen my girlfriend do it. I've seen a couple of the other psychopaths I've met. I experienced it myself. And some of the people will be probably maybe even like 10 months kind of in that time period of where they're experiencing, I think, pretty similar experiences to like borderline personality disorder, where you have like the emotions and the ups and downs, kind of what you described. You think you're just like clipping along or something, and everybody's like, why are you why are you up and down so much? But also kind of like the blaming things. Like I sometimes call it too like an emotional puberty, because that's what it felt like to me. Is like, okay, suddenly I have these new feelings. I mean, they're just regular feelings, but
Mhm.
then it takes like 2 or 3 years to kind of understand them and to like learn emotional self-regulation and to all these things that you didn't learn because you didn't experience the emotions before. And so I do think it's easy to just think, oh, these new emotions, they're saying that you're a baddie, and so you must be a baddie, like I think that is kind of like definitely a phase that I've noticed even psychopaths go through. And even I went through that where I'd be like, I'm so angry. And so you made me angry. And so you're a baddie.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing that's tricky too, to remove the like I believe it's this person that's causing the feeling, and like sometimes, but I have to remember that like, oh, well, I have borderline, like some of the things that I do, I might actually be misinterpreting this,
Hmm.
one of those things like mistaking a neutral face for an angry face, stuff like that. Also, I think you put that really succinctly, like the whole analogy with the boat, spot on. I really like that.
Hmm.
Because yeah, I mean, I do feel like I'm on the back of a boat. It's tricky, and in some ways, the awareness has for a minute there made it worse, because it's like, oh man, I really do feel out of control. Whew. Now I'm not blaming anybody, and I'm just kind of sitting with it, and I'm
Hmm.
really feeling the spikes and the drops, knowing that I'm in a safe environment. No one's doing that to me,
Yeah.
you know. So, but in some ways, it's helped because now I can address it, obviously.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, you mentioned Sam Harris. What do you think of Sam Harris? Do you
So
have any opinions?
I think Sam Harris is kind of correct, and I'm a freak for agency, I guess, and consent now, but mostly because like people who are recovering or alcoholics, right, who don't drink, they're just completely sober or whatever, because it's not a good idea for them to have like even one drink. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm that way with agency. Like I have abused people's personhood, autonomy, agency so chronically over all the years that even like a little thing, you know, I don't know, like a sales tactic or something that most people wouldn't think is crazy bad or something. Like I wouldn't even do that. I really tried to be steer so clear of that that I try not to manipulate people at all. So Sam Harris would kind of be like, "Oh, everybody's being manipulated all the time anyways." That's a cheap and dirty way to characterize.
Yeah.
his thoughts. And I kind of agree, but I think it's true to say like you don't control 100% of you. Like your brain feeds you an illusion of the control that you have. True. But I also think it's fair to say that you have some control, whatever
Yeah,
that is. It's greater than zero. And so I think, well, with the control that you have, then do what you can. So I don't really kind of mind what he says, but I think when people kind of use what he said to say like there nobody has any control or something, and so therefore like nobody's responsible for anything, I think that is abusing what he said. I don't think he really has said that or means that or wants people to believe that.
yeah. Well, one thing that I'm kind of curious about with that, is I agree. Like people should be held responsible for their actions, while we simultaneously look for like the whole, like why did that happen? And I
Yes.
do like kind of at the base level of, okay, what if free will isn't real? Fine. I have a very real experience of agency.
Yeah.
So it's not helpful in my day to day to even worry about that because it doesn't feel that way at all at no point. But it
Yeah.
would be helpful to think about like psychopathy. Be like, maybe they didn't make themselves, for someone who can't comprehend like what it is like to have a personality disorder. That might be a more approachable way to do it. Be
Yes.
like, they're not really choosing these thoughts, and any of the, even if they veto a thought and say no, like the choice to do that might not even really be in, and so like on a practical level, like, if someone is they're compulsively killing babies, you just say, hey, let's keep them away from people, that's not good. But then also looking at like, why did that happen? Where is there a common thread in our society where this is happening a lot? Is it something we can address? Like, let's address it, because we're not, and it's there, and not ignoring it isn't doing anything. It's hurting everybody. If
Yeah.
we could acknowledge it, intercept things early, I mean, that's just like less harm overall for everyone.
Yeah. So I
Wins.
have I have three things to say to this. Help me remember them. One is, consequences. Two is Amanda Knox. And then three I've already forgotten. Hopefully it will come to me.
Knox, consequences. I'm writing it down. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, three, what was that last thing? Oh, maybe we can find some trends. I don't know.
Find
Maybe
some
the,
kind
the
of common, see what it is. Is there any common thing, some hole in our systems and society that maybe we could patch?
yeah. Uh, Yeah, maybe okay. I already forgot the third. It will probably come to me. So the first one is like I actually am a big believer in consequences because I think sometimes as we think about like enabling, I've been thinking a lot about this recently because I think I've mentioned this before that there is a song, an aria in the Messiah, Handel's Messiah, the oratorio, where it's like, thou shalt break them. So it's saying, thou shalt break them in pieces, thou shalt dash them with a rod of iron. And most of the time, we don't think of Jesus, loving Jesus, as like breaking us in pieces. So I was like, well, like, why would Jesus do things like this? Has been the question of like my Easter season, probably because I am religious. But I thought, well, it's kind of saying in certain instances, it's better for somebody to face consequences than it is for them to be given mercy. Like it's better for them. It's not just better for society, it's better for that person to like when they stub the toe, feel it. And it may not be their fault that it's not a fault-based thing. It's not like saying you're a bad person, therefore you get consequences. It's just like this is the natural consequence, or this is a consequence of that particular action. And I think that consequences help us make better choices in the future. Like we were saying before, you either win or you learn something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you make a mistake, if you do a bad thing or whatever, you get the consequence, then hopefully that's going to help you make a different choice in the future. It's just like feedback. So I think of that. Why would you deprive somebody of feedback? Like, is that merciful to deprive somebody of feedback? Like most of us would say no. Like
Right.
you're kind of allowing them to live in like this world that doesn't exist, because it's there, you kind of like shielding them from the natural consequences of their actions. The second thing, Amanda Knox wrote about the Idaho killer guy who like killed a bunch of people, or where was it? University of Idaho or something. Did you hear about this in
I've
Boise or whatever?
I've heard about it, but unfortunately, there's been so many.
Yeah. So a lot of
Like,
people have said about him, like, oh, look at his eyes. You can tell he's evil and stuff. So she kind of just talks about evil. And I thought it was a really interesting, well put article. I forget where it was, but you can probably kind of Google some of the details. She starts talking about the University of Texas Austin shooter, the sniper who crawled up like into the tower and was like sniping people. I guess, according to her, he had left a note beforehand saying, there's something wrong with my brain. Like after I'm dead,
yeah,
please autopsy me.
yes, yes, I've heard about exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. That's
And
what
they
I'm
found a
talking about.
brain tumor.
Yeah, that's what I'm
There was
saying.
yeah, he had a brain tumor, right? But then they said, but this type of brain tumor wouldn't have led to this. And I'm like, I don't really trust 1970s doctors and
No,
neuroscience to be able to
no,
say
it
that with
wasn't long
100%
ago.
certainty.
Yeah, how long ago were they recommending cigarettes? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, so
her kind of argument is this, that, when we have an explanation for somebody like this, beforehand, we might think, okay, evil. After we find out he has a brain tumor, then we're like, wow, that's crazy. He was just sick. He had this brain tumor. That's what was happening. And so we feel totally differently about him. And she's kind of saying, we don't know hardly anything about the brain, like how much of what people are doing, kind of very Sam Harris, are they actually kind of in control of? Or how much are they doing it just because they're sick? A little bit about our dads too, like when you understand that they have this kind of background, you understand the reasons why they've done these things, you realize it probably wasn't done to hurt you. It probably was done to because they're disturbed. They have these problems, these mental problems, these emotional problems that they haven't been able to resolve,
I want to
right?
touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because that was something like even the detectives and like the lawyers were saying afterwards, like, he definitely loved you. He was very sick, not okay, but like, dude didn't want to hurt you. I mean, he was obsessed. It's very weird. I found like, I'm going to go on a quick tangent. Is that
Yeah.
fine? Okay. Yeah. I found, so after they had arrested him, I had gone back to the house and just was kind of looking through all his stuff. He had like put like my razors from like shaving and like my hairs in bags and like dated them and like labeled them and like drawers of it. I was
Wow.
just like, wow, And I remember I found some more like DVDs that he had recorded stuff on. Um, his brain's amazing, by the way, because I was curious, like put it on and like I blacked out. I fell over. Like I got so anxious, I just passed out. And I was like, oh, we're not going to do that. And then went down to the police station and it's like, I have some more evidence you guys want. He's like, honestly, like, yeah, we'll take it. But there is so much that like he's got stacks of VHS tapes and DVDs. Like you could just toss it. I'm like, what? He's like, well, he's going to prison. There's this, it's done, like it's done basically.
Yeah.
Uh, which is kind of also brings me back to like, I mean, humanizing him because there is part of me that's like, fuck, if someone had talked to him and intercepted him, if he had gotten help, dude could have been a tremendous help to just society in general.
Yeah.
Like he's very mechanically minded. He worked on like big like steel mill construction equipment. Was real good with cars. One of the values I got from him, which is a really cool one, I think it's a Boy Scout thing, but like I used to skateboard a lot. So we'd go out to a place, I'd skate. He would drop me off there and he'd be like, hey, when you go in, make sure you leave with like a little like handful of trash. Like take the trash out of wherever you go, just clean up.
Hmm.
So every time I go like trespass on some property I'm not supposed to be on, I'm like, oh, put some trash, throw some trash away and like kind of clean something up. And then I'd be like, now I can skate and kind of, and then it's like, who does that hurt? That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But he's pretty militant about it, like, dude, the place is a mess. Like, go get some trash. So it's like, I sit there and sometimes when I'm going to sleep, I think about it. I'm like, dude, he has been going to sleep in prison for 28 now. It's been about 10, almost 11 years. Like, preventable. I think it could have been prevented.
Yes.
Because I remember this one you can't say for sure because it didn't happen until my mom moved out. So maybe he was waiting, or maybe it was just kind of this like, if the opportunity arose, maybe he had the capacity to do it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that when she left, he got on meth.
Oh.
And I think the more he got into that addiction, the more he was willing to basically cross boundaries, increasingly crossing boundaries, because obviously it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make an excuse for him. Again, he could have been predatory and just waiting. I'll never know. You might think this is interesting. I don't know. The only thing I ask when I talk to the lawyer is like, do you need, like, I'm here to represent you. You don't actually have to go to court for this. You don't have to see him. I'm here for you, man. What do you want? What do you need me to say? I'll do anything I can. And I was like, see if you can get a mental evaluation. I just want to know what the hell,
Yeah.
that's what I want. And they wouldn't do it.
What?
Yeah.
Why? Because they were afraid that he would get off on it or something? Like he would not do less time or be
I was
diverted?
I'm not sure. I was on a ton of drugs. I didn't argue. I was just kind of like, oh, I take it back. I was actually first time I talked to him, I was on drugs. A couple weeks later, I had tried to get sober and I was in like a detox facility. He actually came to the detox, and that's when I asked him. And then he called me back and was like, yeah, they're not going to do it. I don't remember the reason. My brain wasn't very clear at the time.
Yeah.
But it seemed like a reasonable thing, right? Like,
Yeah. That's a totally reasonable thing. The one thing you ask?
Yeah, that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to say to him. I mean, it was just, there wasn't anything to say that hadn't been said at some point already. It's just disappointing, and he really hurt me, and just difficult. But
Yeah.
there was actually a restraining order they just immediately placed, like, you just can't ever be near you at all ever again, which is a trip. His mom, I don't know what her deal is, but she will try occasionally to like send me a letter on his behalf, which is like super illegal. He's like not supposed to be in communication to me. So he'll like write me letters to give to her, and she'll be like, what's your address? I need it. I'm just like, no. It's kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, I kind of get the, like, that's her son,
Yeah.
and she doesn't want him to be in prison, but it's also weird because she doesn't like hate me either. She feels like responsible. She admits like I was a terrible mother, and like this is something I could have been there for. But it's weird because, for her, she's going through this thing like, damn, my kid's in prison. I don't want that. She wants to help, but then she'll like tell me about it. She'd be like, yeah, we're working on his case. I think we can get some stuff. Maybe we'll get him out of better. I'm like, don't fucking tell me. I don't want to know. Like, I moved. I'm far away. Like, whatever. He'll be, I think, in his like 70s or something when he comes out. I don't need to know. I don't want to know that. But yeah, I had something I was going to jump off into. But anyways, yeah, they wouldn't give me any kind of evaluation. And that
is kind of sad. So you mentioned something earlier. It actually is like Amanda Knox mentions this again about this. She calls it like a moral luck. I think she didn't come up with it. She ascribed the idea to somebody else. But she said, imagine that you kind of have like this propensity, but you just are never put in a position in which to use it. Kind of like you said with your stepdad, where it's like, if he never kind of became your stepdad, then it would never have happened. Maybe it would have happened to other people, or maybe it wouldn't have happened to other people. So she uses the example of, if you in 1930, you're a German, 20-year-old, let's say. Yeah, you immigrate to Argentina instead of being part of the Nazi party, that commits all these atrocities. That's moral luck, because you weren't even put in that situation in which you were kind of required to do that. And so you're basically released from it. And I think too, I just learned this about Adam Lanza. Do you remember him? The Sandy Hook killings. He shot up the elementary school. Yeah. So apparently he was very troubled person. He had a lot of issues. But then in high school, he had like a big turnaround because the head of the technology club or something, computer club, really, became interested in him and his case, I guess, you know, like his particular education plan. So he really reached out to him. And during that time period, he really flourished. He even had like people over to the house to do these like computer LAN parties and all this stuff. But then that teacher ended up getting fired because there was a student who was like giving the security guard in the high school like a really hard time. And so the teacher kind of grabbed him and sat him down and was like, you know, stay there and like whatever. And because he grabbed him and sat him down in a chair, he got fired. And then after that, Adam Lanza just like off a cliff, like stopped going to school and just like, you know,
Whoa.
ended up, yeah, it is a crazy thing because listening to that, you're like, what if that teacher hadn't gotten fired? It's such a small thing, you know, and it may have made like all the difference in this particular situation. So
Yeah.
moral luck is like a crazy thing, you know, like a lot of people who do bad things or in bad situations or whatever, you know, to what extent are they responsible for that? You know, is a really complicated question, I guess, is what she was just trying to get at. And she was saying this too about like imagine, you know, that you let's say you do have a brain, you know, that's kind of psychopathic. It's difficult to connect with people. It's difficult. You have like, or, you know, your brain or whatever brain, you know, imagine being in whatever brain and how much would that affect the way that you behave towards others? And how much should we take that into consideration when we think whether somebody's evil or they're just sick?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I really like Sam Harris uses this term like moral landscape,
Mm,
which I love. Great way to think about it because it kind of comes into this like I think that a lot of people that go into prison, but there's no rehab. They're just being removed and
right.
then left, right? So they do this thing. We don't like that. You're going to prison, and instead of like, okay, now you're not harming other people. Let's kind of reshape maybe some of your beliefs or maybe some of your behaviors. Let's see if we can help you not be as miserable as you are.
Yeah.
But instead, we're okay with saying we're going to make you suffer more. Like, here,
Mm,
we're going to torture you. We're cool with that.
right.
Stop hurting these decent people, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of messed up. Like,
Yeah, it is
there's a
messed up.
disconnect. So you see, like, moral landscape in that context, people don't care. You go, like, hey, this guy killed his wife and kids. And you go, like, cool. Like, I hope someone kills him. Like,
Yeah.
you're don't fire with fire. Like, it's not. What an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind.
Yes. Yeah, I have a hard
So,
time with that too. So another thing that I just learned again about a killer, but Jeffrey Dahmer, I learned this from the Netflix TV show, is that when he went to prison for molesting like a 14-year-old boy or whatever, the when he was kind of caught about that, he he goes to prison, right? And the dad, when he comes out like a year later or something, like the judge is totally soft on him. When the dad says to him when he comes out a year later, like, "Hey, did you get like a therapy in prison?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, I was hoping that they were going to help you with your problem, you know, help
yeah,
you with whatever you're doing." And he was like, "Nope." Basically, it was just like 3 square meals and hitting the gym and like going to the library, like nothing to address Dahmer's like underlying, you know, severe mental dysfunction that led him to do this and then led him to do all the rest of the stuff that he did.
yeah, yeah. It's like because it's weird. It's like you can't talk about it without just immediately being judged.
Mm,
Like, people are gonna get angry if you even try because, like, you're defending. Like, no, I'm not. I'm just like, unless they do get killed or death sentence, like, the story isn't over. They're still alive. Like, heck, like, there's so much we could benefit from, even if we deemed them like unworthy to come back to society. Like, there's a lot to be learned. Like, again, you could, if people had like more of a, okay, diabetes, we know the symptoms. I'm type
mhm,
1 diabetic. We see the symptoms, we go, oh, doctor, boom, diabetes, medicine. What are the symptoms of BPD?
yeah.
I've asked, yeah, I think you'd mentioned this in a previous like conversation that if I asked someone, do you know someone with diabetes? Actually, do you know someone with diabetes?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, right.
Mhm.
Now you would have a different answer to this, but if you ask other people, how many people with BPD do you know? And they're like,
Yeah.
what is BPD? You know, it'd be like borderline personality disorder and like crazy girlfriend. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, so nobody knows what this is, you know, and then nobody knows, like, they see psychopathy, movies, serial killers, all this bad stuff, but like no one knows how to identify anything in like a child or a young teen, or in the people who do, there's probably just not enough of them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, does that resonate with you? Does that sound?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think, I belong to, I guess I'm on the advisory board or something of a nonprofit, Psychopathy is. So I guess it's psychopathyis.org. And I talking to some of the people about it, what they want to do for psychopathy, and like especially with psychopathy in kids, is do the what happened with autism, because like in the 90s, I guess, like nobody knew what autism was. They were like, oh, autism, like they don't speak and you have to like put them in a home, and or like Rain Man, or
Ooh,
like yeah,
yeah,
and it was kind of thought of as like not a death sentence, like if you got a diagnosis of autism for your kid during that time period, but like a severe disability for which there was no real thought to be treatment or something. It was very much like a dispiriting diagnosis to get. And so somebody, they started the Autism, I think Speaks Foundation or whatever. And then they just kind of like promoted awareness of it. They tried to get more funding for research, and now they do like interventions on autistic kids, like as toddlers, and
yeah,
get them like all the help and support that they need. They have like all this research to be able to kind of say, okay, here's how we recognize it. And we do these different tests, and like everybody knows about it. And it's like the same thing could happen. The same thing could happen to all these other kids who have these problems, personality disordered kids who are on that path, but it's not happening, but it could. And so I guess I believe in that future.
yeah, yeah. And one, I've had a lot of people pull me, like, there was a lot of people who tried.
Yeah.
There's people who were too far removed to do anything, but people who tried. And I think if they had some concept of it, they probably could have had more of an impact,
Yeah.
you know, because it wasn't that there's not good people I interacted with. It's just my immediate orbit was extremely unhealthy.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like you're saying, just some awareness is going to make, I mean, even in myself, just being aware of it, giving it some label, not a permanent label, just a description of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Okay, old therapist, really good quote. You can't get there from not here. And I love
Yeah.
that so much, you know. So now I kind of was able to had somewhere to work from, you
Yeah.
know. And I think this conversation was really important to me, and I kind of don't want that much anonymity because I want people to know more about this, even if like it's still rudimentary. It's better than just not knowing what BPD means. It's
Yeah.
better than like hearing the word psychopathy and like immediately thinking of the worst possible thing you could imagine someone doing, like, and making your stomach sink. You don't have to do that, you know. Um, but yeah, with just there not being a lot of awareness, it's probably going to be a lot of the reactions, you know.
Yeah, I remember the third thing I was gonna say. So my therapist used to say this to me all the time. He said change is always possible, but sometimes it's not possible in that moment. And I always like this because if somebody's kind of behaving like a 2-year old is throwing a fit, in a restaurant or something. Yes, it's possible for that 2-year old to get better and stop throwing fits, but it might not be possible in that moment. In that moment, that 2-year old may be actually doing the best that he or she can. And I
Yeah,
think that, I love to hear that because, it helped me give myself a lot of grace. Like when I made mistakes or kind of slipped up again and thought, okay, change is possible. But
yeah,
maybe not in that moment. Maybe I really didn't have the ability to do any better than I did in that moment. And I think that of the people I meet too, or like people like my dad, like he says, he gets so angry and screams at somebody, and you can tell that he doesn't want to be that person. You can tell that he doesn't want to have his grandchildren afraid of him. But maybe in that moment he actually did do the best, which doesn't mean that it's okay for him to like not to just stay like that, but
right.
it just means in that moment, and then make steps to try to make the next moment a little bit better.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. Um, yeah, it's something I had that. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I had that realization, like, I want to say like maybe 2 years ago. I was just driving home from work, and I kind of had this feeling that like maybe the way things went were the only way they could have gone. Maybe I didn't intentionally sacrifice this decision to make this decision. Maybe given what I had at that moment, I picked what I thought was best, even if I know that, like, well, I was hungry, so it was a bad decision, you
Yeah.
know. Hungry, knowing that hungry brain is still hungry brain, it's still not
Yeah.
gonna,
Exactly. Sometimes you can't snap out of it. Sometimes you can't pop out of it. You are in that way of thinking, and that's what leads to the bad decision. Yes, you can try to once you are snapped out of it, you can try to like work harder to be more self-aware and etc. But yeah, if you're caught up in that way of thinking, it is really hard to pop out of it and see a different way.
Yep. Well, and now, like, I've learned about BPD, I can't take that back. So now if I'm doing stuff, I'm like, well, I could be reading more about this and doing more. I could be working on this thing a little bit harder, because now I know. Whereas
Mhm.
before, like, no fucking clue what was going on. I'm like, I get really upset, so I make this mad shuffle to kind of change my environment to fit how I'm feeling, and then only to feel completely different 20 minutes later. Like, maybe I have this like really serious conversation with my wife because I'm upset about something, and it turns out that, like, maybe I wasn't that upset and I was overreacting, but now we've had this long 30-minute conversation, we both almost cried, and then like 2 hours later I'm like, oh, I'm a dick, I didn't need to I didn't need to uh, but she's more aware of it too, so she can be like, this is some bullshit, like, chill out, take some space, we'll talk in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so many problems get resolved that way. I also have the ability to take things back.
Mhm.
We've kind of allowed that space where because we know I say some shit and I don't mean it, I will take
Yeah.
it back and trust. I have shown so little emotion that she didn't think my feelings could get hurt. So
Wow.
she would just go off the handle and say things not even that inappropriate, considering situations. Like, if I've been freaking out, I've had big explosion. This wall behind me, might not be able to see it, there's a big TV. It used to be
Mhm.
another TV, but I took a stool and I threw it across the house through the TV, and then I went back to therapy. But
Yeah. Good for
um
you.
thank you. Yeah, well, my wife is amazing. She has given me so much room to make mistakes, and then I think once that happened, I cried actually for the first time in our like relationship. She saw, I threw the TV and then threw the chair, threw myself on the ground, and just tears, like ugly cry. And she said she felt so relieved just to know that, like, hey, he's feeling something. And and then when I'm telling her, I'm just like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be this way. Like, I feel like I can't help it. Every time I mean, like, when you pick up on it, you're right. You're not crazy. Like, if you think I'm mad at you, but I'm not talking, it's that I am, but I don't want to tell you because it doesn't, I don't feel like I should be mad at you, but I'm
Yeah.
so mad. And so I'm like, you're right about all those things. I just won't talk about it, and I feel guilty and I feel shame and I feel all this. And so that's really opened up a relationship a lot. She knows if I say something dickish, she'll try to bring it to my attention. If I don't pick up on it, give me an hour by myself, and I'm just like, I feel real bad about it, and I'll text, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that, and like, maybe, what do you want for dinner tonight? I'll cook something, or some gesture. But so that's been kind of a beautiful thing for me, is just having that awareness and her awareness as well. And you think about that even on a bigger scale, like, even if like school teachers have some of that awareness, they can be way more supportive of their students.
Yeah.
I
Like the
have this.
Adam Lanza teacher, he really was. He was like, I've noticed that when he has these meltdowns, it's best not to confront him. It's best to, he had like a whole plan for it. I was like really proud of him to like hear the story. It was just so sad that he got fired. I'm not saying it's a okay thing, I guess, to grab a student and like force him in a chair, but it's like It's just hard. Like, nor do I think he's a bad guy, for
Yeah.
having done that. He did all sorts of great things. And I guess that's the thing I worry about a little bit with kids these days. What's the matter with kids these days? Is sometimes they seem, I have these kind of babies in my life that are like the children of my friends or something, and they're like kind of, like try on that cusp of young adulthood or whatever. They're still children or something, but the way that they think about things is like, this person bad, that person good or something. And I know that it's kind of a maturity thing too, to think about things in black and white. But I encounter other people where I see that too, like this kind of um, discomfort, I think, with being in uncertainty, like living in the gray a little bit or acknowledging that some things are gray. Kind of like you said, some people, when you tell this story about your stepdad, they're just kind of like, he's a baddie and, I hope somebody kills him or something. And you probably don't hope somebody kills him.
No, and I hear it a lot because people say it and they're like, because I like you, I do that, like that guy hurt you, like and they mean well. So I'm just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
like you meant well, but that's not, yeah, like that didn't feel good to hear.
No. Because you don't want that, like, please don't do that on my behalf, like, do this weird thing. I feel weird, even things that this is a total, uh, much smaller, like, silly example compared to the one I just gave, but, like, when people are like, "Oh, I don't eat at Chick-fil-A because I'm supporting you," me, like, and the fact that I'm in a romantic relationship with another woman, and I'm like, "Chick-fil-A is my favorite we go there on date nights." Like every Tuesday, like
Right, right.
like, please don't, like, if you want Chick-fil-A, feel free, you can do it for other reasons or your own reasons or whatever, but not for me. I don't feel any type of way like the way that you guys are feeling about this. Like, I can think they have great chicken sandwiches and think that some of the franchise owners are maybe anti-gay marriage and be okay with it. I feel no no
Right.
inner turmoil about this.
Yeah. Um, I wanted to hop over. I wanted to actually ask about religion. Are you okay talking about some of that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so uh I grew up Mormon a
Oh,
bit.
really?
Yes. So if you try to quote some stuff to me, I probably won't remember it because I stopped going when I was about 12, 13, when all that stuff started happening. But I would go to church with him too. And so, I'm kind of hearing about all this, just hearing about everything in religion, hearing about, Jesus, heaven, hell, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost, and like all of this stuff. And when I go home, like I'm doing something really secretive and kind of weird and like uncomfortable. And my mom left me with this guy, never talked to me again. And that was like the one person who was supposed to like love me and like care for me. And so I'm like going to church this whole time. I couldn't reconcile it. I kind of fell out of it. Um, my grandfather, the one who's actually been one of the most positive forces in my life, the one, my stepdad's dad, he's still Mormon. He still goes to church. Well, now he's a bit older, and so he actually has some of the members will just come to the house and come read with him and come hang out, and which is always nice. I like to talk to the missionaries. They're really nice. I'm very like I'm not religious. I'm pretty atheistic, but I do love people. And so if I see someone and I'm like, I like this person and they're religious, I just be curious and I kind of open. I'm like, hey, I'm probably not going to go to church with you. But if you want to talk about anything, like talk to me and I'm not like going to bite. I'm not like a atheistic and want to get you. I'm not like trying to fight or prove. I don't want to. I'd honestly feel bad if I talked about it and someone like stopped going to church. I would
Mhm.
feel bad. I'd be like, oh shit, because that's not comfortable. And like, was that healthy or not? Uh, but no, I grew up in it. And it's kind of interesting. There's a few people in my life, very select few, where I'm like, I wonder if they are psychopaths. And like 2 out of the 3 are from the Mormon church. They still go. I'm like, is there a connection here? you know. I don't know. You got anything to say about that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a connection probably for like for good and for bad. I guess the good is like I think psychopaths can kind of crave since they don't really have like the internal structure of like their own personal morality as much, or they don't experience that very strongly is a good way to put. It may help to have like external scaffolding to kind of help them understand certain things and understand the world too. And for the most part, like Mormonism is just like a Christian theology, which is part of like the broader Judeo-Christian Muslim theology,
Yeah.
like all the children of Abraham. And so you do kind of like understand a lot more of the world, I guess, in having like a religious education. I guess the bad part about it is I do think, unfortunately, like yours is not the only story. In fact, there was kind of famously, like maybe back in September, I think, or August of like 2022, there was Mormon family where the dad was like routinely raping everybody, raping the daughters and stuff. And the
Oh,
mom had gone to the bishop, yeah, in Arizona. You can Google this. The mom had gone to the bishop and like said what was happening, but the bishop didn't report it to the cops. And the bishop called like this is was like kind of a scandal. The
yeah.
bishop called this hotline that's manned by Mormon attorneys that will kind of guide you about when is your obligation to report triggered. The idea being, there are, for better or for worse, there are legal privileges. Priest penitent is one of them, spousal privilege, attorney client privilege, doctor patient privilege. There are a couple
Hmm.
privileges where we want people to be able to feel free to communicate with these people without fear that it's going to be later used against them in a court action, right? So this was kind of what was happening in this situation, but people thought this was a particularly kind of bad example. But I think I know a very very kind of close connection. I have a close connection to a Mormon bishop who was also abusing his children, raping his children, I guess adoptive children. uh and it's like, wow, this is crazy. And I just saw another recently, some Mormon bishop who had been grooming a young woman in his ward with using like these little bishop interviews that they do, bishop worthiness interviews, I think is what they call them, and had groomed her and then like, was like molesting her the whole time for 6 years. So I do think like in a world like that, like Ted Bundy was a Mormon for a while. Did you know that?
I did not. Wow.
But like Mormons just kind of are like, we're so glad you're here type thing that I think they overlook a lot of differences is probably a
They're
good way to put it. And
so
Utah's supposed to
optimistic.
be the fraud capital of the United States. Like they're a little bit gullible. They're a little bit like see what they want to see. I think they're a little bit like I think they're a little bit, a good way to put it is they see the best in people, or they want people to be like their best selves and aren't guarded as much as they maybe should be among other people. So that's what I think is the psychopath connection is like if you're kind of a psychopath doing baddie things, you probably aren't as likely to be outed amongst the Mormon community, is my
Right.
guess. The Ted Bundy Mormon, like his ward or whatever, they were still supportive after he got arrested. They were like, We just know that Ted was a great guy, and they didn't know he murdered people. They were like innocent till proven guilty, but there were like plenty of quotes from them
Wow.
being like, we wish Ted Bundy the best. And
Oh
I bet
boy.
they do. Even after he
Yeah.
got convicted, I bet they're
Yeah.
still like, we hope that he repents and comes back to Jesus. So the Mormons, they're not being fake, I guess. They really kind of do believe in that sanctity of human life, even if the human life is somebody who's done some really bad things.
Well, and you think too, like, in prayer, like they're probably now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but during prayer, do you ask like for forgiveness? Is that part of it?
I think so.
Okay, so there's that component, and from what I've understood, God is supposed to be understanding, all loving, all forgiving. You just bring, go to Him,
Hmm.
and so like I wonder if maybe they're trying to emulate the that like the Christ. love, God's love, God is forgiving, like go find God, whatever you've done. Because isn't there
Uh-huh.
characters in the Bible that were like assassins and then they were like sainted later on or something like that? I could be wrong.
Yeah, maybe not in the Bible, but I think definitely some of the saints, the
Yeah,
Catholic saints were
yeah. So I don't know. But I could see, yeah, like that, even if they don't, hate the act, not hate the person, pray
right.
for them, try to be forgiving. I've seen a lot of that. Like I have, like my grandfather, unfortunately, he's a doormat because he's trying to be loving and trying to be forgiving, but unfortunately, he's got a little bit of that like self-sacrificing. Like he's
Mhm.
kind of willing to like put others before himself to his
Yeah.
detriment, you know. Which is hard because I think like instinctually a lot of people will like even if they don't mean to kind of abuse that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so I think, do you remember General Conference? It's like I call it TV church. They just have it like on the TV. You don't go to church that Sunday, you like watch the TV and it has like the Mormon prophet and it has like some other like, the 12 apostles and like other people speak. So at the most recent general conference, I think it was like a week ago, the prophet, his name is Russell M. Nelson if people want to Google this. He talked about how we have to be like not have contention, with the way that we deal with other people, like not be contentious online, not be contentious in our family, not be contentious when we're asserting our own beliefs, not be contentious, anytime, basically. And there's another one, Uchtdorf, Dieter Uchtdorf. Has a quote that says there can be conflict without contention. So there's kind of like this push from the
Mhm.
Mormon church leaders, and there's been backlash about it.
Oh wow.
Which is surprising to me. I'm like, that there are some areas of doctrine, Mormon doctrine, that are pretty clear. And there's like a Book of Mormon scripture that says contention is of the devil. Like that's a direct quote. So it's like, but people are like, maybe people kind of listening to this will like guess why the backlash is because a little bit kind of like your grandfather, where they're worried that what they're being told is that they cannot stand up for themselves, they cannot assert themselves. But what they're kind of saying is, is my understanding of what they're saying with this, like there can be conflict without contention, is you can stand up for yourself in a way that still respects the personhood, the autonomy of another person. You can send somebody to, like execute them while still respecting, the personhood of this person. Or you could do it in a way that totally doesn't respect the personhood and you're like, you're human trash and we don't care and we'll treat you
Well, yeah,
however we want.
I could see. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna respect the person, I mean, maybe just feel like it's a loss instead of being like, "Cool, that guy's gone." Maybe being like,
Yeah.
like we failed that person.
Yeah.
Have some like regret or remorse. Be like that could have, someone somewhere probably could have intercepted at some point, and maybe not even like not even not make them psychopathic, but like steer them in a way to where they can get through society and not like wreck things as much or not wreck themselves as much and like I don't know, again, humanize them,
Yeah.
get people.
That's a
um
really interesting
but
thought. Let me paraphrase it and see if this is what you were saying. You think that maybe some of the reasons why people are so kind of like quick to be like, yeah, like get him, like uh let's treat this person badly is because it in a way kind of allows them to think that that person is like a lone wolf actor, like that person's evil, and if we just isolate the evil from us, then we can again be like, pure. Kind of like a
yeah,
scapegoat without acknowledging like, "Hey, I didn't help this person, I didn't, uh listen when he wanted to talk about his feelings. I didn't, like your own role in kind of like the way that that person turned out, you're kinda trying to deny it and kinda say, like, no, that person is just, it's so interesting, because everybody's part of the human race until they kinda do a bad thing, and then we wanna ostracize them. We wanna be like, "No, this person's not part of the human race," so we dehumanize them, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, is say this person's not one of us?
Yeah, dehumanizing or like objectifying even, you just turn them into not a human. Like, cool,
Yeah.
you are a thing, you're not of us. Like, yeah, kind of like wipes away their guilt. Like, cool, I'm there, no part of me could ever be like that. Yeah, they're all damaged, they're objectified.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
don't
right.
have to Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't have to self-reflect. I don't have to see these own tendencies in my own self. I don't have to kind of acknowledge that that is part of humanity, is, that we're not all kind of like lollipops and roses or whatever. Like we all have, certain things that we struggle with. Yeah, that's interesting. And, this idea of like especially when it applies to these type of situations where it's somebody who themselves was a victim who goes on to victimize other people, like, you can just basically be like, memory wipe that as if it never happened, be like, "Nah,
yeah,
at least we're safe, we got the baddie."
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of messed up. Yeah, there's a lot of, that's why, again, moral landscape. I talk about context a lot because it's a trip, just changing the way you look at things. Well, you actually you posted an interview yesterday. I think you guys were talking about something about Eastern and Western religion, and like you got the baby and the old person in the boat. Like, I've been tripping off just that idea of context and like where you're at and what your belief system is, and it's like, um, we have a pretty close-minded attitude towards it. Like, we want to lock you away and forget about you.
Yeah.
There's like zero curiosity, or if there is curiosity, it's like, I don't know. There's just not a lot, I guess. At least not in an approach that's like goodwill, because you see a
Yeah.
lot of, oh, we want to figure out how to ID these people and like catch the baddie, catch the baddies. So it's like,
Mhm.
and like, as once we started talking about it, I started looking for, or sorry, once I started watching your content, I started trying to find more information, and it is astounding. Like, what did I type in? I typed in something like functioning psychopaths, and like, there's you and the people you talk to. Like, that's the only. There's no visibility,
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow. And then I started looking up some for borderline. Seems to be getting some traction. It's starting. Super treatment, super unavailable.
Yeah.
I have been trying to find someone, and there's no one that takes insurance. They're like all private pay, and I just can't afford it. And then it seems like a lot of the centers that can take people through. Am I going on a tangent?
No, go ahead. I love
Okay.
this.
There's apparently a center somewhere in Europe where, or I think it's Ireland actually. No, let's just say somewhere in Europe. But they basically can take people with borderline and like put you through like an inpatient program.
Mm.
And like, it's like a several year long programs, and they can fully go like top to bottom and like help get you in remission. But it's super unavailable, and there's only a couple people really researching it. A lot of the talks that I'll see online is like professors or like researchers in a classroom setting. Someone just recorded the lecture.
Mm.
There's not even a lot of just like YouTube content where people are like, let's learn about this thing today, and they talk directly to the viewer. There's very little of that. And then also in men, a lot of them, it's like from a woman's perspective, which is fine. I'm
Mhm.
just like, whoa, what about, like, are we being diagnosed to something else? Are we less likely to get treatment? I think it's a little bit of the latter. I think so much of the behaviors that come from this are like, could be typically male, so there's some amount of like, well, he's just one of those guys. And so it never
Yeah.
gets, relationships fail. I'm under the delusion that it's other people. No one cares to help. If I'm in relationships, this is something I've always thought, is I thought like women have the luxury of, you correct me if I'm wrong, but like if they have a bad relationship and they leave, it might be a little bit easier to find someone they get along with. They may have more options. Whereas like someone leaves me, there's not like, I can't just go hit up some, there's not a bunch of girls waiting to talk to me. Whereas girls I've been with, there's guys. It's not hard. If they're nice to them, that's all it takes sometimes. And
Mhm.
so like when I suffer like a repercussion from a relationship, it's super damaging. I end up super alone for a long time. I went on a tangent. I lost where I was.
No, I like this. Yeah, or it's interesting to I don't like it for you. I like to hear it, because I've never really thought about that. I see the gender differences, I think, almost opposite with psychopathy, where it's like the female psychopaths are not represented, and it's the male psychopaths who kind of form the like this is the what psychopathy looks like. And I think there is I can even try to post it, or if people want this the psychopathy is on Twitter, just like or tweeted this study about like a month ago. So it would have been like in March or maybe February 2023, about how there is a gender bias for, like all it's kind of like the resume studies where they take a resume and they just swap out a male name for a female
I've
name,
seen
or they
that.
swap out, yeah, an African American name for,
Oh,
a white sounding name. And so it's same thing. All that's changing is the name and the gender, and they're giving it to psychologists. And like there's a huge bias for diagnosing the same person as a psychopath if they're male, and diagnosing them as a borderline personality disorder if they're female. And you wonder, like that's crazy. But maybe it's in part because, well, I don't know, stigma and bias and et cetera, et
oh,
cetera. But it's
I remember. Can I go real
go
quick?
ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so I guess what I was getting at is I think it's because for guys, a lot of the time, and I've experienced this, it's harder to find a partner. So I'm willing to put up with more to stay in a relationship, whereas women don't have to put up with as much. And that's
Yeah.
my experience. So like they're not really afraid of like not as afraid of losing me. Whereas like I am like it was hard to find you.
Yeah.
Please stay. And like so what happens is I might not get as much time to have my behavior reflected back at me. Whereas like
Mm,
a guy might be willing to put up with a lot and see all this behavior and just like boom, boom, boom. Wow, I watched all this. Maybe we need to do therapy. Let's make this work. I could be super off base. If anyone watching this thinks I'm super wrong, please tell us in the comments. I'm not married to any of these ideas, but that's just my thought on it, my experience. Is so like I'm easily replaceable. I don't have as much time to work on my shit. I don't get as much feedback. You know,
yeah.
fortunately, my relationship, wife is amazing, very
Yeah.
understanding, very patient. She is amazingly loyal and committed, which is scary sometimes because I'm like, hey, if I'm like abusive, like, ah, like I'm so scared of falling into being abusive because I think she would like tough it out, and I just that breaks my heart to think.
Yeah.
But it is comforting to have that security of like, well, I am working on myself now. I have done very, very like almost night and day difference from when I got diagnosed to now. Um, and so like in her case, it might be worth it because like now I'm able to be more loving, more consistent around the house, better able to communicate. Um, she comments that she's happy with the relationship often without me having to look for it. She'll just kind of
Mm.
say it, and it's like that's a big change from how it used to be. And but I don't think a lot of guys get that opportunity.
Good for you. I'm proud of you. And I'm so fascinated with this because I've never heard this. And, thank you for like taking the risk to share it, that's your experience as being kind of male, because I can kind of see it because, women who are attracted to men, let's put it this way, uh, I think men can be kind of like, there's probably like a lot of reasons, like sex is probably one of them, uh, you know, the difference in genders in the desire for sex, overall differences, although everybody's, their own special, unique snowflake and stuff. But the idea that, like women are reluctant to to like date somebody, especially maybe somebody who, it's just like a normal person, like, doesn't have things kinda standing out. Like, I've heard this before that women are, like, attracted to kind of, like, in their 40s, well-established, 6-foot tall businessmen, and
Able stability.
yeah, exactly. And so if you're struggling with something, I do think you're right. Like, if a woman is struggling with something like that, that same kind of 40 in his 40s, 6 foot tall businessman is probably more willing even then to put up with a lot, for whatever reason, than women seem willing to put up with a struggling, person of the male gender. So that's interesting, and it's kind of sad. I've never heard this, and
Well,
I'm like
I
struck
could
with the
defend it.
sadness of it.
I could defend it a little bit. Thinking about it is, men are also more prone to violence.
Yes.
So
And
like
so
I
they
have
could be like, like you get angry once or something, they're like, nope, I'm done.
unsafe
Yeah, unsafe. Yeah, yeah.
because
Because I mean, you're naturally bigger than she is, probably, just on average.
yeah.
It's scarier. It is scary to be around men just because of the size difference and the statistics, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's not like undeserved, but it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks because like I know that. Like, okay, when I'm walking down a hallway and there's just another woman, I just pull out my phone and like turn around until they're
Hmm.
around the corner. Because I'm like, I don't want you thinking I'm like staring at you or what. Like,
Right.
I just turn around. I'm not even doing anything. Sometimes I just wait and then I'll go. I won't go in the elevator with just one woman. I just wait. I don't stand there either. Again, I move.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one's ever said it to me, but I get the feeling that there's so many creeps out there that you're just on edge. You're kind of
Yeah.
looking out for it. You expect it, or you're whatever it is, however you've adapted to it. Like me alone in a room with you is probably uncomfortable for you. So I'm going to stay, I'm going to give you space in every way, shape, or form I can. Just because yeah, like, and I have been in past relationships. I told you I threw the chair, like, wife was fucking horrified. Like my dog was horrified. The only thing that kind of saved it was me crying. It
Yeah.
was the only thing. And like I've had exes where I've like broken down doors and again throwing and just screaming in their face. And I've never hit anyone. My
Hmm.
exes have hit me a lot, but I have not hit anyone. So like part of me is not like I guess I was never afraid of hitting anyone, but the scaring people. I mean, the thing it's reflecting back at me is like I get looked at as a monster. And I kind of feel like one too, because it's like,
Yeah.
man, if someone had done that to me, I probably would have stabbed them in the neck. Like I would not have tolerated that. I
Right.
would have been violent. So it's like, and you still love me after that? Whew, So but anyways, yeah, the anger. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. So
Yeah.
that could be part of it. That could be part of it, low tolerance because more danger,
Yeah.
you know. And then
But
go ahead.
well, it just is like an interesting dynamic, as you say, because I can see how it would lead to uneven kind of outcomes for people. The same woman who has a personality disorder would probably get more support in her primary relationship than the man, even though that there's kind of like a stereotype that, like, what is it, that men treat their female partners in like these heteronormative couples as like their therapist and stuff, like they're trying to get fixed by their girlfriends, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And I think so. Like I said, I had one of my exes hit me. I wasn't scared of her afterwards. It hurt. And in that context, I was like, well, I tried to kill myself. I tried to jump out of a window. And she ran across the room and straight like football tackled me onto the ground and then just like was so upset that I would have done that in front of her that she just was like bah, bah, and just started swinging and I just kind of took it, you know wasn't even
Hmm.
mad at her afterwards. I'm like, dude, I put her in a crazy situation. Relationship was toxic, don't get me wrong. It
Yeah.
brought a side out of me that was really dark, but at the same time, like, suicide's it's hard, and then threatening it and then trying to do it in front of someone out of anger, like, oh my gosh, so it's like, whereas let's say something happened to Sam, if I punched them in the face, like, that's it, I'm going to prison. That's it, game over. And I'm big, like it could kill someone.
Yeah. It is true.
So like I can't make a mistake.
Yeah.
I can't make one like that. So it's
It's interesting.
Yeah. And then you get close again, you get close to it with this, like this rage. It's like, that's the most I can express it is through like breaking of things and self-harm. You know, like I'll like try to stab myself in the leg or something and like throw a table and just smash stuff. Like my knuckles have been completely like all the skin ripped off before, and just self-harm, breaking of things. And so like that's as close as I can get without, I guess that's the most I could express it without crossing some sort of like legal line or
Yeah.
something maybe couldn't be taken back. I guess the harm, the fear that you cause people can't be taken back, but like you can't punch someone in the mouth and be like, oh, like, get over it. Like that's permanent, you know, like you scarred that person. So um that being said, those expressions are horrifying. And why would anyone want to help someone like that?
Yeah.
You know, and again, if my wife had gone through that, I could tolerate it. I could have her swing at me a couple times and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You never feel this way. Like, what's going on? Like, it's not, there's not that third of fine. Anyways, I'm kind of lingering on that point, but
Yeah.
so, um, just looking through the notes here. I wrote so much. Meditation. What's that like for you?
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about it earlier. Like a lot of it's just like bringing awareness to things that I'm experiencing in my body or my mind and just kind of understanding it a little bit better, like understanding why or or how or what's the origin. So I like that. I think it helps put like a little bit of space. Like I learned this recently that for Alcoholics Anonymous, maybe it was from you, that like never the first thought
Yeah, it was
is like,
us.
yeah, a mantra.
First thought wrong.
Yeah, first thought wrong. Yeah, yeah, yeah. First thought wrong, which is like basically just like stop, pause, and like give a little bit of space. And it's interesting because there's this psychopath the guy that I've been corresponding with, and he sent me his Rorschach test, you know, the like the ink blots and stuff. So the analysis, just kind of like the rudimentary analysis of like performing a Rorschach test. And it said something about how he makes decisions too fast. And so it said kind of like it will seem impulsive, maybe even to a therapist, his behavior will seem impulsive, but what it actually is ill considered, you know, like he hasn't taken the time to like take in all the information and consider it. He has like his files 30% downloaded and he like shuts the laptop or whatever and takes
Right.
off. You know, it's just like not completely all the information hasn't been transferred into his conscious brain yet kind of thing. And I thought, you know, this is like a pretty good description of psychopaths. Like a lot of what I would say is kind of like my impulsive behavior, especially as a younger baby psychopath, is really kind of just ill considered. Kind of like baby, you know, everything, baby rattlesnakes or something, just bite at the littlest thing, you
Yeah.
know, kind of like they don't have the experience or the self-reflective reflection school skills to be able to do it. So I think meditation helps to like kind of put a wedge in between, you know, like the stimulus and the reaction, you know, the action that I choose,
Yeah.
the reaction to that stimulus. So like it used to be real quick and now I feel like it can be like as long as 10 seconds.
That's a big deal. That's big.
It
That's
is a
huge
big
progress.
deal, yeah.
I mean, in that mind space, 10 seconds is a long time.
It is
It's
a long
a lot
time, it's
of
huge, and then
progress.
every once in a while, I can just choose to, like, shelve it, you know, so the 10 seconds can last even longer, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my experience with it. Like more recently, I've done meditation since I was really, really young. I'm not going to put a year on it, but very young. And like, it's gone through a lot of phases. Originally, it was like some woo woo kind of stuff. Like I'm like chakras and connecting with like spirits and stuff, and which wasn't practically helpful at all. But I did sit and like did spend time in like the breathing, and it was getting some, I don't, maybe this is the wrong word, but like tertiary benefits, some
Yeah.
things that it wasn't the goal. And then as I've gotten older, I've started working. It's more just about attention, like because that's
Mm,
kind of the scientific approach is like controlling that attention. You know, because I can be like, well, let's bring our attention to our left foots. You know, and like, oh, my left foot is like numb a little bit. You know, whereas we were talking, I didn't notice that. You
yeah.
know, and it kind of points out how many things that are entering our consciousness that are there that we're not looking at. you
Yes.
know?
I
And
think it
so
makes you more humble about, like, your certainty, you know, you're like, "Well, I can change my attention and change so much about, like, my perception of reality in just a few minutes." And so, like, how can I ever be certain that, like, my experience of reality is, like, the truth reality?
talk about identity issues.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and this is one of the things that makes me very really grinds my gears is when people are really confidently opinionated.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, I just shake them like stop. Like your opinion is too set in stone and like if this is unhealthy, you're a problem to
Yeah.
progress, you know? And it's like please don't be so confident. Like have at least be willing to listen and then come back at it with why, you
It's
know,
not good for them either because if they're so confident about things, like, they're not taking in, like, your if you have a set opinion about something, you will perceive information differently. That's just, like, the truth of it, there are, like, tons of, like, studies that have shown this, like, with bias, and so you're doing yourself a disservice to hold your opinions so strongly, your perception so strong like a very tight fist, it's very fragile. It's a very fragile way to exist.
yeah. Yeah, it's super unproductive. Yeah, it's just something makes me upset. And yeah, when you do spend some time being like attentive to yourself, meditating, working on just where your attention is on yourself, um, like you said, you can't. It's almost hard to kind of identify with any ideas or any opinions because it's like, well, I do feel different minute to minute, and like if I hear, let's say like I'm against abortion, and then I hear a really good argument for it, but it's almost like the last person I talk to is the opinion I have. Because I'm like, that's the last thing I remember. And it made a lot of sense at the time. If I hear anything else that changes my mind, I'll probably switch over. And so I hesitate a lot to talk about my opinions on things because I'll say something, someone will criticize it, and I'll be like, oh, damn. And then it happens so fast, you
Yeah.
know? And there's this like urge to like declare. I do have
Mhm.
that urge to be like, this is how it is. And it doesn't work. It doesn't
Yeah,
work for me.
my uncle who is bipolar, is diagnosed with bipolar, does that too. Will say kind of like some really spicy takes. And you just know that he doesn't really believe it. It's like what do we call it? An intrusive thought. Like
Yeah.
some thought pops in his head, he just says it or something. But that's another thing that people really judge other people for is you just kind of assume naturally that if somebody says something, they believe it, but it's not true at all. Like almost everybody probably experiences intrusive thoughts, and certain mental health disorders experience it really frequently.
Me for sure. I've done it
Yeah.
like 3 times in this conversation. I mean, even for the deeper, if you want to go back when I do those blank spaces, that's kind of, I may have had like a memory come up or something. And I might have even missed the last couple seconds of what you said. And I'm like, well, oh shit, and I knew I was going to do it, but it's kind of interesting. You want to talk about like trauma, BPD. Viewers
Mhm.
notice that that's kind of some of the stuff I do. I kind of disassociate and there'll be a little gap in the conversation, which is
Yeah.
where mindfulness comes in very, very helpful. If I
Yeah.
can just hear, we're just having a conversation. I'm I'm very confident in my ability to have those too. You talk about that kind of a chameleon personality. I've had so many conversations with so many different people, kind of figured out how to get along with everybody,
Yeah.
and just a little bit of interest. Well, and speaking about interest, this is another one that was kind of really intriguing to me. I don't know that we've talked about it. Is like humor. Like for you, like when something's funny, I mean, what's that like for you? Jokes, humor, comedy? I mean, is there, I don't know. For me, humor is like an overwhelming emotion. It just washes over me. What is that like for you?
Yeah, that sounds awesome that humor is like that for you. I wonder why, and you can feel free to answer in a bit, but I'll answer first to be fair. So for me, humor, I don't understand sarcastic humor that well. I'm for whatever reason like a very sincere person, which sounds really funny coming from a psychopath. But I guess I like the absurd probably is like the humor that I enjoy. I like kind of the juxtaposition of like weird things. Like one of my favorite TV shows was um man, what do you call it? Kimmy Schmidt, the whatever real
Right.
adventures of
I
Kimmy
love
Schmidt.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
where she's she was like a abductee. She was kidnapped as a 14-year-old or whatever, and then like repeatedly raped by the reverend or whatever. And now she's trying to live a
Right.
normal life. And it was so funny to me. I was like, this is like so crazy. This tickles my funny bone so badly. But yeah, things like that. I like the oddball for sure. I love Mel Brooks. Madeline Kahn is one of my favorite comedians. Rest in peace, Madeline Kahn. But she was so good at like taking like kind of absurd situations and being so straight faced through them. I mean, I could watch anything with Madeline Kahn. I just like love her ability to just kind of be like, I guess like the improv people say like yes and, to just like take an absurd situation and run with it. I just think, when people are like so willing to get beyond like I guess the status quo or what's expected and just get like so way out there, I really enjoy that for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same for me as like, yeah, the surprise. It's like unexpected, like, what did you just say? You know? But yeah, quirky stuff I think would kind of fall under mine. You like Mitch Hedberg at all? You ever heard of
I
Mitch
don't
Hedberg?
No, haven't.
Oh, he's fun. He's a one-liner comedian.
Oh,
It's fun because he's like, he would seem like he's not family friendly, but he kind of ends up being pretty family friendly. But yeah, his one-liners are really good. Like I guess a real popular one is like an escalator can never break down. It can only
mm.
become stairs. It's like, sorry for the convenience or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And someone said this before, but like on paper, he's not that funny, but his delivery is really good.
Yes, that's same with Madeline Kahn. She, like, can take even the worst script and, like, make it, like, freaking delicious.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I just kind of, because like you laugh a lot, and I'm like, I wonder, you know, having read some of the book and wondering like some of the behavior you've had before, like what is humor to you? Is it different to you? Is it the same kind of deal for me? How different is that experience? Because for me, yeah, it's unexpected stuff. I know once I get that surprise, like sometimes it's kind of like insanity for a second. I just cannot stop laughing. I'm crying. There's times where I'm like, please stop, please stop. And it like hurts to laugh. It's like not even fun anymore. It's a very powerful feeling, you know. And sometimes there's just like amusement, where I'm like, oh, that cat wiggling is just that's goofy looking, Um, but yeah, yeah, no, I just wanted to follow that and see what that was like for you. Just stand up. Do you like stand up more than like movies, or is it kind of whatever?
I guess it could be I don't have, like, a preference. These are funny questions, though, or, like, good questions because, like, I have a sister-in-law who, like, loves slapstick humor. Like, every time there's somebody slips on something or whatever, she's like
Yeah,
and I think it's so charming, like, a charming trait of her to be, like,
yeah.
so because you expect, like, 6-year-olds to like it, but she's just, like, kept that love.
Oh, so it's more like you are amused that she's amused at that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I think everybody gets a little bit of that because there's times where I'm laughing at shit. And my wife's like, it's not funny, but you're having a good time, or yeah, she'll laugh on that. Well, and I noticed I'm glad you said something about the sarcasm. You had done an interview with this fella has his own YouTube channel, and he interviews people. He's done a few with some mental illness. I don't know if that's the whole channel is mental illness. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it Andrew Gold?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
uh-huh.
Um, he had made a sarcastic joke, and I remember you'd like responded to it. You're like, oh, okay, no, sorry, won't do that. He's like, no, it was a joke, and I was like, oh, and I wrote it down on my humor. I wonder, and you are laughing, so there's something there, and I just thought, I don't know. I've heard a lot of the interviews too, and like people kind of ask you the same questions,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I thought maybe this is stuff that's like simple. I mean, like creativity, art, humor. It's simple, but it's an important part of everybody's life, you
That's
know.
true.
And then you talk about humanizing. Like I've seen some of the comments on your book, and you're like, damn, like that kind of, that's right. Like you're doing the thing that like we talk about, like with the stigma, and it's like
Yeah.
you're doing the thing. Okay. So I was talking about, oh, like humanizing you more, because I think that's happened. I think you've been a bit dehumanized, as far as
Mm.
like, but with some like, let's just talk about some like normal stuff. I got another question. Is so like you have this YouTube channel, you have your book. Let's say you get this viral video and something, you have some meteoric rise to YouTube success. Do you worry that like any part of you might be triggered or have like an impulse to act on having, I don't know, more uh, like attention, or do you think you'd be able to handle it in a healthy way, having a lot of attention?
I think I think probably I hope the latter, and I hope the latter, especially because I think of myself often, and this has been true even when I was like a child, as like being the messenger and not the message
Oh, oh,
about
okay.
things. Yeah, so I'm like I'm just telling you guys like my experience and sharing, helping other people share their experiences. And I think if people liked it, I would probably see it as them being thinking it's really interesting. I feel the same way like in my legal scholarship when I was a law professor. I thought too, I was like, here's this weird thing that I've discovered that we haven't thought about yet. And I tested it and look at these weird results that like go contrary to what you would expect or whatever, or contrary to what the law kind of naturally assumes, the factual assumptions underlying this particular law. And I didn't think of it as like, oh, I discovered it. I just thought of it as like, look at this weird thing I found, almost like, look at
Yeah.
the shell. And it didn't
Yeah.
matter that it was me that found the shell or somebody else that found the shell. The cool thing about it is the shell.
Oh, it wasn't like an ego. There's no ego thing involved with it. When like, look at me, I found this shell. How cool is that? Look what I did. Am I
Yeah, I
correct in
think
that?
that's yeah, true-ish, and I think it's kind of another good illustration maybe, like, when I do music, so I talked to somebody other recently, and they're like, "Yeah, how can you be a musician and, like, not have strong emotions or whatever?" And I thought, well, most of the professional musicianship I do is just, like, straight reading, so I read
Yeah.
exactly what somebody else has
Yeah.
written. And when I'm doing that, I'm just trying to convey what they have said, I don't I see again myself as the messenger. I'm the messenger of this composition. This
Yeah.
composer wrote this thing, and I'm just playing it the way that I think is best, that will, like, show it off to its best whatever. And so that is like kind of the way that I've always thought about life. Even in my family, like I kind of share a birthday with a sister, and I've always loved that. I've always loved to share a birthday, and because I can like focus on her and just like not focus on what's ever happening to me, and everybody else is like splitting their attention or focusing on her. But like in my family too, I am kind of known more as like a power broker than I am somebody who has like wanting to assert my way or something. Like, hey, what do you guys think about this? Like, can I get enough buy-in on Yellowstone, for a family vacation.
Okay. Okay. Um, cool. Uh, that that actually kind of leads me into like three things I wanted to go into. One of them was like, I know we've talked a lot about like good and bad or like evil, good. I had one of these. He was like one of my first sponsors in AA. Kind of an interesting character, but he had brought up like, bro, I'm not smart enough. I'm not God. I don't know about good and evil. I know there's like healthy and unhealthy. And like as far as you and me are concerned, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at healthy behavior, unhealthy behavior. We're not worried about good, bad, moral judgments. That's so subjective. Like we'll just focus on what's healthy and not. And so like that's kind of something I've been thinking about this whole conversation is like again, like if let's say you're like a psychopath, like what's a healthy way to express that or to use that?
Yeah.
Um I also had a question I didn't get to earlier about like when we were talking about mindfulness meditation, like how do you think undiagnosed psychopaths, younger ones, do you think it's possible for them to be receptive to like suggesting meditation? Or do you think they'd have to kind of come to that on their own? Or do you think people could influence that?
I think that definitely you can influence. I actually think psychopaths are above average impressionable. And I think that this is maybe something that we might share in share with the other personality disorders, is I think that because we're not in the driver's seat of the boat, that other people can like get in the driver's seat of the boat and do kind of whatever they want, a little bit easier than if we were in the driver's seat of the boat. So I think that they tend to be really open-minded. In fact, that's one kind of good expression of psychopathy that I've heard from people, is that psychopaths tend to be really not at all judgmental, really tolerant and open-minded about things. So I think if you kind of intervened, I will say this, that I have probably less experience with children because I don't talk with psychopathic children a lot. It's kind of, they're not the ones contacting me for the most part. But I talk to the adults, and the people who are in their 20s that are trying to change, they have such an easier time of doing it than the people who are like in their 40s or 50s trying to change. It's almost like night and day difference between how difficult it is for them. So I would assume that that trend where it's easier to kind of make small adjustments as a child is applies to where, like, if you had them doing meditation, if you had them kind of becoming aware of things, if you had like some of these other even just little interventions, that could and would make a big difference in the way that they end up. They'd be much more self-aware, and with the greater self-awareness would be, like much better, like higher functioning.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, it's gonna be hard to get to people. I mean,
Yeah.
what I've seen, and like my wife had worked in education. Uh, they get iPads.
Hmm.
They get more attention from the iPad than any like a human. They
Yeah.
go to school and they go, at school they give them iPads. They work on iPads and then they go home and they have something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we talk about like, okay, well, maybe mindfulness meditation, something you could introduce earlier. Like, there's so many inactive parents too. It's like there's gonna be holes in that,
Hmm.
because I think it probably is getting put in some schools. There's probably some kind of mindfulness component being added to schools with more money. When you think like, I'm gonna get really kind of abstract here, but like poverty, you can't you probably aren't going to catch it there, because even if you identify it in the student, like they're going to, if their home passes like a child services check, that environment is going to foster it, and you can't
Yeah.
pull them out of it. They can get kicked out of school and move from school to school to school till they're old enough to drop out or get emancipated, and then now they've got this like really dark worldview. They've probably only been met with just, I mean, probably not many good things, and so, or many healthy things. That's going to mess up your worldview. You're probably not going to like people very much. Probably not going to be inspired to care. So I think money is probably a big part of it. You know, Mental illness seems to run rampant in poor communities. No one gets diagnosed with things. Nobody can go to the doctor, or if they can go to the doctor, they don't care about
Yeah.
themselves. And you know,
Well, I think too, like a strong genetic component. People who have mental health disorders, I would guess, have like generally lower socioeconomic expectations from life. And so then, like you have people living in poverty, having children, and those passing on those same propensities for struggle.
yep, yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's definitely passed down. And then I'm all about like, okay, I've kind of had this opinion of like, so your genetics play a role, your environment can bring out things. Like, I'm type 1 diabetic. I didn't come out until I was 15.
Mm,
It didn't express itself until I was about 13, 14, which is about when I started realizing how messed up all that stuff was.
yeah.
Mom had been gone, just entered into high school, hormones. That gene got expressed. I'm type 1 diabetic now. My body
Mm,
attacked my immune system, attacked my islet cells. So I think too, like BPD, I know there's this big chicken or the egg question of like, all right, I'm assuming it's the same with psychopathy of like, how much was there? How much did the environment foster that? But I have this opinion that it's like almost all genetic, because your environment, apart from like objects, is people,
hmm
and it's like their genetics are being, it's just like, it's kind of all genetics. It's just there's a lot of people. I don't know. I don't know. Does that resonate with you at all? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So the genetics affect the environment, and so really the environment's genetic as well.
Yeah. So your environment's like kind of dictating which genes you express. Your environment is other expressions of other genes. Like it
Mhm.
kind of is all genetic at the end. And apparently there's some studies that like I unfortunately can't quote them. So again, people, if I'm wrong, just say Tim's super wrong.
Mhm.
Um, oh, um,
Should we stop here?
you
Let
know
me
what?
just
Actually, you know what? It's okay. Because again, I don't
okay.
think. Yeah, I'm probably going to talk about this on my social media stuff as well. I'm very happy with how this is going. So
Okay.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, but where was I? I forgot.
But you were gonna say a study. You were gonna cite a study that you couldn't quote the study about
Oh,
genetics and yeah.
the personality studies that like personalities are pretty stable over a lifetime, and that parents might not actually influence the kid as much as they want to think.
Yes, that's crazy. I see that all the time for whatever reason in my Twitter feed is that you think that parents have such a big effect, but actually they don't. And a lot of in my Twitter feed, they're saying things like, so parents can all just chill out. All the things that we like worry about so much are probably not doing hardly anything.
Yeah. Now, aside from abuse, that is one thing they
Yeah.
said. If you're abusing them, that can stunt a lot of things. That can really harm, obviously harm. But
Mhm.
I mean, aside from abuse, I mean, encouraging certain like I want you to play this sport, I want you to do this thing, I want you to be interested in whatever, and or even like I don't want you to be gay. Like it's not you can't influence that. Their personality, who they want to be. Um, which, yeah, it would actually be kind of nice. Yeah, parents can chill out a little bit. Again, understanding. If you knew more about your child, you'd probably be more understanding.
Mhm.
Like I think my mom never had any kind of diagnosis or any kind of resources or any kind of adults in her life to help her.
Right.
So now she's like in her 50s and I'm talking about BPD and she's like, yeah, you get a lot of emotions. I'm just like, and this is kind of a big part of, a lot of these things are important to know when you interact with me. It makes my life a little easier. And it's like, she's just so unaware of how she could be helpful, and if
Yeah.
she had known that years ago, like we could have, our relationship might have looked a lot of different, looked a lot different. I think we've talked about this already though. We've kind of talked about it's just not a lot of visibility on the mental health issues. um Talked about, man, we're getting through this list. I'm actually curious at this point, do you have any questions, anything that like maybe I've brought up that's interesting to you that we haven't explored?
I think I've done a pretty good job interrupting you when when I've had a question or like I've had an idea. So yeah, I have no lingering. I'm pretty assertive. That's what my therapist used to always say. You're a very assertive woman.
Well, okay, so someone like me, and my therapist had pointed this out. Like, I told her, I'm like, yeah, sometimes my friends, like, when I'm being a dick, they'll just be like, Tim, you're being an asshole. Shut up. I'll be like, okay. And then they're fine. Like, that's all that needed to happen. I'm like, thanks. Thank you for telling me because I didn't know.
Yes. This is I actually suggest this if people are in a relationship with psychopaths, and actually I know this from like my dad being a narcissist, is that like they respond pretty well to boundaries. If you just tell them like, "Hey, look, stop doing this," like it bothers me that you do this. Like for the most part, not every time, but I would say like maybe 95% of the time, they're doing it unintentionally and they want to maintain that relationship. It's like, I follow this person on Instagram, Nedra Tawwab. She has like Find Boundaries, Find Peace is her book. And she always quotes this. She says, you have boundaries with relationships that you want to keep, not ones that you want to leave. Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
bother enforcing a boundary unless you wanted to keep that friendship, keep that
Wow.
marriage.
I
Yeah.
love that. I
Hmm.
love it. Yeah. Wow. That's a good one.
But
Um,
I agree. Like my dad does not want to lose more relationships. Like if you kind of say, "Hey, I don't like this. Please stop doing that." He sometimes, he'll be, like, weird about it, like a childish about it, but a lot of times, especially if you kind of, like, use your intuition to find the right time to talk to him about it, yeah, it actually helps things.
Yep.
Psychopath, same thing, is like, hey, you have to stop doing this, or like, will not tolerate this anymore, is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah. Well,
understand it.
so in having listened to you a lot, because I went through, I was like, shoot, if we're going to talk, I really want to kind of get a feel for I mean, see how it goes. So um, I had an intuition that you would probably really thrive in an environment where people just check something and me like, hey, like you're doing the thing. I'd imagine you'd be able to handle that. Like, oh, okay. Like if your goal is to have, you know, more healthier or mindful relationships with the people around you, I'd imagine you'd respond super well to that. Like it wouldn't
Oh
even be
yeah.
perceived as criticism. You're like, oh, you just made it easy. Like now I can
Well,
ID what happened, you know?
yes, because it's like what we were talking about before. It's like feedback. You're giving me
Yeah.
feedback. Now, I do think that the one thing that I'm really sensitive to, and I think it's because I have a personality disorder, is when people try to characterize me as a person. Like it's fine to say something about my behavior or say, better to enforce your own boundaries. Like I will not tolerate X behavior anymore is a perfect way to say it to me. But if you say something to me like, hey, you're a liar, or like, I don't think you're being sincere, that's the sort of thing that will make me gray rage. I'll be like, you cannot say that type of thing to me. I will get very upset, but it is triggering me because it's hurting me. That's why I'm being triggered by it, is because it hurts people to characterize them. I think personally characterize them because you're trying to substitute your belief about who they are for their own self-concept about who they are, and it's destabilizing in the same way that gaslighting somebody is destabilizing. You're saying, like, your reality, no, my reality is the one that you have to accept. And everybody has the right to have their own reality. That's how we
Yeah.
like maintain a stable everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so when I had mentioned that to my therapist, she's like, do you like that? I was like, yes, I do. Like, I really do like when people do that. It makes life so much easier,
Hmm.
because they want to have a good time. They know I want to have a good time. They just kind of make the quick correction. I think it's called an affective empathy. Is that the
Yeah.
one where you can like contextually understand, like, oh, he's probably upset because this happened? Like I said this, that, or the other, and infer that someone's. Am I even close?
I don't know that much about empathy. I do know cognitive empathy is like you're putting yourself in their shoes. Like you're trying to put kind of like a thought experiment, like, hey, what would it be like? Oh, I can see that, I would also maybe be upset about this. Okay, they're probably upset.
Okay. See, that's the one that's just kind of lost on me. And there's times where, like here, even in the relationship, I'll just let it go. I'll be like, I believe you. So we'll roll with it. I don't get it, but I believe you and I don't want to harm you. So I'll stop that. I love you and I won't do it again. And I'm sorry. Like I'll make an amend to it. I'll apologize and make an amend.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, sometimes I'm just doing it like just because I know, not because it actually makes sense. It just makes she's more satisfied with me. I'm happier. It's fine. Like I don't need to know everything. There's some things I might just not get. And I've
Yeah.
I've actually dealt with that all the time throughout my life where I just like I'll hurt somebody, I'll piss them off, and I just don't get it. I don't get why. Um, gotten better as I've gotten older. I think sometimes I wonder when I was really young if some of my symptoms might have actually been like antisocial, like if it could have fallen into that class at one point. Because like I was like I guess I wasn't manipulative. I guess that component wasn't there, but very angry guy, very aggressive guy, very rough around the edges, almost impossible to interact with. Very like spit and venom, kind of always defending myself. Um, so yeah, I didn't have a lot of empathy for other people. Didn't think about a lot of people. Part of that, I'm sure, just being young. It's not all developed, so it's like that part of the brain isn't even really there yet. Um, and like I'd actually talked about one thing I wanted to talk about was like you mentioned your possum story.
Uh-huh.
That one, I wonder, like, is that like that's another context thing? Like, is that really like some people read it and they're fucking appalled, and
Uh-huh.
like I was for a minute, and then I'm kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but also I see a rat or a cockroach, I don't like go to scoop them up either.
No.
I kind of walk away. I personally like possums, but I actually saw one. This one was weird. This is kind of a gray area for me. Is like I had put out some poison for groundhogs
Oh,
already.
really?
Yeah, because
Is that a thing?
where I'm at, yeah, it's like these pellets. They eat it and it makes them
Mm.
sick. Felt bad about it, but at the same time, like my whole everything fucked up in my yard. And they dig these big holes that like my dog can get through, and
Uh,
a possum got it. And I'm pretty sure a possum. I mean, I think that's what happened to it because I went in the backyard and there's a possum like crawling kind of on the ground really slow. And I'm like, you're dying. And just kind of watched it. And I'm like, I'm going to go inside. I don't know what to do here. Which also, I don't know what anyone would do. Like, I
yeah.
feel like I'm not nice enough to kill it. I feel like that would have probably been the nice thing to do, you
Yeah.
know? Which again, you talk about moral landscape. That's kind of a weird one.
It
Is
is a
it nice?
weird one. Yeah,
You
so
know?
I have a little story about this. I'll like leave this person anonymous, psychopath. But
Sure.
they're talking about like in childhood, they saw a sick dog back in kind of like the woods behind their house or whatever. And they're like, okay, I'm gonna go home and get a shovel and we'll just like beat this dog to death. And so this person's doing it with a friend and like beats the dog to death. But again, like in the Midwest or something, this person had seen the grandparent like shoot the sick dog or whatever. So it's like
Yeah.
culturally different.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then the friend freaked out though, was like, "Oh no, we just killed this dog." And so the friend, was like, cried and ran away and like maybe told like the mom or dad or something. And but these kind of like moral gray areas where you're like, I don't know, was it right to beat the dog over the head with a shovel or not right?
Yeah. I mean, and so it's like that. Like personally, yeah, it was kind of a fucked up way to do it. Could have brought it to a vet and had them do it there.
Yeah.
But I can see like, okay, for someone who doesn't have a lot of these like emotional components, I can see the leap. I can see how
Yes.
they got there. Again, I don't fundamentally understand it. Like to me, that again, one of those things like I don't get it. I don't get it. But at the same time, I can see the thinking. It's like, well,
Yeah.
like I had grandparents who were like, you know what? Like I'm not getting any more pets because I'm tired of doing this.
Hmm.
Because they had to put them down and they're like, I
Yeah.
just it's I cannot do this. And like, but you see it and you think that's what you do. Like that's what I always heard you do. They get old, put them down, and like never had anyone who would do it at the vet. Didn't really hear about that. And that was always family that was a little bit more removed as well. We didn't
Yeah.
have pets in the house I lived in, so I didn't like go in the backyard and watch it. But that's in my head. I'm like, oh, that's what happens when they get old.
Yeah.
Um, everybody's watching. Do with that what you will. But like my experience. I mean, uh, animals are tricky. I used to be really bad towards dogs. Never killed a dog or anything, but like didn't have compassion. And so
Yeah.
like I thought like when they're barking, spank them. And like they bark more, spank harder. And like didn't know what I was doing. Strung out on drugs as well. Whatever it was wrong. I don't feel like that was good. I feel bad about myself. I think about it a lot because these dogs, I had left their life and never got to ever make anything right. Not
Yeah.
that they're holding on to it, but there's this sense of like injustice. Like, man, they are innocent. They were abused. I did it. I can't make it right. The only thing I can do is moving forward, not do it again. But like, it's those things you can't take back.
Yes.
And so now I have a dog, and she is so fucking spoiled. She gets massages now. I'll get in there behind the shoulder blades and just kind of give her a little massage. She's like, oh, it's super cute.
Mm.
She's very grounding for me. I recommend if you have borderline, get a dog. They're nicer than people. They're not going to judge you. I don't know about for psychopathy. I don't know. Animals are probably kind of gross for you, huh?
It's actually I think there's kind of a split there. I meet a lot of people who identify as being psychopathic who are like, "I like animals better than humans." And then there are others that are like, "I like, I have a hard time with humans caring about them, and I also have a hard time caring about animals." So,
Yeah. You think that's probably just what you grew up with?
Yeah, what you grew up with, or, you know, like maybe if you had kind of negative experiences with animals at first, then it seems like your psychopaths are less kind of born with like a warm, fuzzy feeling towards animals. So they'd
Okay.
have to have that experience to be like, oh, animals are okay, you know, or I like animals.
I certainly was not born with that. No, that I had to learn. Like I learned it was wrong, but I had never seen like that type of love modeled either. Like I don't know
Yes.
what it's like to, what does it even look like? And now I've kind of just made it up for myself. I'm like, part of it is like I'm married, so I know what it feels like to be loved, like very well. I know what it's like I'll give her like my wife a back massage, very good response, you know, ooh, back massage.
Yes.
I'm the best person on earth after that. Like my dog probably likes that too. She can't say it, but give her a little massage and she's a happy little camper. Uh,
Hmm.
she's always stoked to see me. It doesn't matter, it'd be 2 a.m. I'd be like, Bird, come out here. And she's fucking, what's up? What can I do for you? And you're just like, dude, you were so loyal. You're so consistent. Oh my God. And it's like, it's funny too, how dogs kind of wormed their way into. We kind of took them in, but they kind of snuck in because like she doesn't do anything useful besides make me feel good. She costs me money. She pees on things once in a while. Um, but yeah. Anyways, if you have BPD, get a dog, I swear, or a cat or something. It's so nice. Um, uh, let's see. I'm having a short blank. Do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything. It's good to give these tips though. I think that like in a world that's so bereft of tips for people who struggle with these disorders, that like any little thing, I think, you know, like this works for me, that doesn't work for me. And you know, like what is it? Your mileage may vary or whatever, but
Yeah.
in trying some of these things, but try it, you know. And I think also to understand there's just a diversity of experiences. Like the disorders manifest themselves in these different ways, and that's okay
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Um, oh yeah, and I remember too. This is something I kind of wonder if is more of a societal thing. If I probably wasn't very unique in it, but there was a lot of, especially because right around like I was like 13. Again, a lot of shit happened around that age, but that was when internet was more available. I
Mm.
didn't really have anything that was, there was no internet, and then there was like that kind of AOL thing, you know, those little, get like a 2 hours of dial up if you put the disc in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had one of those and could kind of do that for a while. But what started happening was like in my friend groups, they would have like YouTube and you would see these fail videos, which were not moderated at all. So there's like people that probably died, you know, and they're laughing hysterically. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's funny. Ha ha ha. And I just watched a guy get completely mowed over by a car and it's really not funny at all. And you're like, huh, he's, I wonder if he's okay. And you kind of you see these things and you get kind of numb to it, and then there's just more and more, and the internet has all of it, everything you could think of, and so like you get really numb to stuff. You even hear about it in like porn addiction. People go like
Yeah.
they get to these really gross places, and like it's same thing with like internet videos and violence. Like I've ended up on. Have you ever heard of Live Leak? I think
No.
is it's just it's like rotten.com or that, just the
Uh-huh.
really gross people post the morbid like death stuff. And like there was a period in my time where for whatever reason like I was obsessed with it. I watched all kinds of like just traumatizing stuff I shouldn't have watched.
Mhm.
uh, and I don't know if that was something like my morbid curiosity, if there was some like I don't really know what that was about. I also don't know if that's like again a cultural thing, kids getting unsupervised internet access, you know, and just being kids and being curious. Um, but I don't know. I think a lot of that had an impact on me. It made me very numb because I had seen like somebody torture and kill someone, and uh, like not even with the context, just straight up abuse. And like when you go to school and then you hear someone get mad about something, you're like whatever any of you got going on, like shut the fuck up. Yeah, like I don't care. I don't feel bad for you at all because like you don't have anything like in relativity compared to this person, you know. So
Right.
there was like a lack of empathy from that perspective. I don't know again if that was just me not being empathetic, or if maybe there was some influence from like what I did on the internet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know I see it sometimes. Like I work at a gym, climbing gym, and so I'll get to interact with like a lot of the youth teams, and some of the stuff they show me is like you'll see them laugh, and it's kind of cool. Now I can be like, hey, why is that funny? And you see it just fall off their face, and they're like, oh, well, I mean, like, yeah, he probably just died, dude. Like, it's not funny. And then all of a sudden, like, they don't want to watch those videos anymore.
Yeah.
You know, no one was there to do that for me and be like, that's not funny, dude. So I think shit's funny, not even having a conscience about it, not even treating this video like there's a real human being on the other side. Again, probably similar to porn where people get objectified.
Right.
You know, actually the same idea. Even thinking about that, it's something that I used to have an addiction to that too. And the thing that kind of took me out of it was humanizing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because it's like, hold on a second, like these people, like what? I'm sure there's a handful of people who have like worked it out in their head and they're fine with it and it's not traumatizing them in some way. But I think the majority of people, that's probably not the case. You know, how are you going to put a 20-year-old girl in a room with, you know, 8 40-year-old guys and say she had, you know, she could have said no. And it's like, well, yeah, but like, probably, again, we talked about women being uncomfortable. Like, how much protection do they really have in those situations? How obligated do they feel? How much pressure is there? I remember being 20, so impressionable, you know? I mean, and so is every 20-year-old. And so you start thinking about that stuff and you're just like, they're smiling in front of a camera. Like, you don't know what's going on with this person. This person's probably been sexually abused. They're probably like, none of these people care about them. They're probably in horrifically like being exploited and like abused. In consenting to it, but like, again, you got to ask, like, how much consent can they give? You know, how much consent can an intoxicated person give? You know, so it's like, we went way off. I was talking about videos and like empathy, bringing things to people's attention, humanizing people, not objectifying them. I think too, yeah, internet really contributes to objectifying people. You know?
I think, yeah, social media too, like the sort of things that people say, but it's interesting, like people seem to make a big deal about affective empathy. Like, oh, you know, when I see a puppy, you know, get hurt or whatever, then I feel sad. And I'm like, but these same people are out on there being like, you know, choke on my fat whatever as I
Yeah.
rape you, B word.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that, like the kind of terrible things they'll say to people. If, and you can see there are a couple examples of like celebrities doing this. I want to think of, like, who's the celebrity I've seen do this recently? He's like in the Pineapple Express movie, Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen can get really crazy, like on Twitter, like with his like personal attacks or kind of like weird little threats or something. And it's like, this is really weird, Seth Rogen. Not to like, you know, like single him out kind of like too much, but I like cognitive empathy better. Like if your effective empathy is like leading you to like threaten that somebody's going to get raped by you or something for a political opinion, then maybe that is not serving you well. Is my question, you know? Whereas cognitive empathy basically is just humanizing people. It's
Yeah.
trying to be like, here, let me put myself in your shoes. Let me try to see the full truth of your humanity rather than try to put you in like a pigeonhole.
Yeah, I mean, even Sam Harris would make that, like, that argument that like, if someone's feeling bad and then you also feel bad, now there's two people feeling bad. Whereas
Yeah.
if you feel good, but you understand how that person feels and you can help them, then there's just overall, like, mathematically less suffering. I'm like, that's a really good way to look at it. Like, you don't have to be feeling bad. You know what I mean? I
Yes.
mean, obviously it helps if I'm like, my wife's like,
It
hey,
could
my
help. Yeah, it could help, but often it doesn't. Often people just feel bad and they think that that's enough. They feel bad and then they do nothing, you know, about it. You know, they don't even try to like take that information and integrate it like in a way that like, you know, enriches the worldview a little bit or something. They just have the emotional response and it's almost like, you know, just like like a pleasurable act to them, I sometimes wonder. Like, even though it's bad, it's like almost like this self-indulgent thing. Like, I'm gonna make this about me for a hot second while explore my feelings about it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see it a lot, like in social anxiety. It's like or even just anxiety is perceived as selfish.
Mm,
Even if it's not necessarily like again, I've had people in my life who I'll tell them something like bad that happened, and then they start crying on my behalf and kind of take the show. And you're like, where's my room to feel this? Like, I don't even feel bad anymore. I'm like worried about you now. And it's like,
yeah.
and then you start to learn like there's a lot of these like, but those people I found like tons of anxieties and fears and personal things. And like, um, it's hard because like they feel selfish. They feel it too. They don't want to make it about them. Not everybody. I've like the people in my life, it's like, I don't want this to be about me, but I can't stop. And it's like, just acknowledging that kind of makes it better.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
I'm just like, okay, well, I know that like your intentions are not like you're not trying to do that and you're aware
Mhm.
of it. I can forgive that, especially when you say you're working on it. Um, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that can kind of steal the show. Even if that person doesn't mean to do it, it can be pretty toxic. Especially in like I've had relationships like that where they just kind of kept stealing the show and there was just no room for me emotionally in the relationship. And it's like, all right, like you're like are you even dating me? Like, are
Mhm.
you dating like someone you think I am or something? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. It is interesting. It is kind of objectifying. Do you watch, What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh,
That vampire TV show?
I love that so much. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
Vanessa Bayer has kind of a character, like a short run character, because they have the energy vampire, but I forget what type of vampire she is, but she just tells people sob stories and gets off on their, like, sadness for her.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
that's sometimes what these people seem like to me, like, where I'm like, "Oh, okay." You're so into your own empathetic reaction about this that it's, like, almost like you've become a vampire, sucking on other people's emotional reactions.
yeah. And which sucks because then it leads to like isolation because people are like, like I've said, you've mentioned having that friend where you're like, I don't have the capacity for your emotions right now. I've 1,000% done that to people where I'm like, like I can't, like it's not, nope, gotta go. Like it's too much, can't do it.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes I don't think that's bad though. Sometimes it is like, especially like with me, I can cause a lot of harm in that situation because it'll annoy me. And then if I'm like mean to you while you're feeling low, like,
Yeah.
it's like, trust me, I'm leaving just because I'm like, I'm not the person. Like, I'll try to help you get to someone who can help you, but I
Yeah.
can't right now. Um, which happens a lot. I mean, it still happens in my marriage too, where there's times where I'm like, hey, also you can call family. Like it's not like they're isolated or anything. Like they can call um a friend or a family member. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
times where I can't. I'm not your therapist, you
Mhm.
know, and vice versa too. I do the same thing. It's not like that's a one-way street. Like I also, um, I will. Yeah, you mentioned earlier, husbands making their wives therapist. Yeah, my poor wife sometimes is my therapist. I bring it all to her, and um,
But that's where I think, like, good boundaries are good, if she is kind of like, "Now's not a good time right now," or "Not this topic," or whatever, I think, yeah, sure. I think it's totally fine to be like, "I can't be this for you." That's just the truth. Or like,
yeah,
"I'm not willing to be this for you." Like, it's so much better to be honest with people, I think, than it is to start to resent them, like you have boundaries with the relationships you want to keep, otherwise there's resentment. If you don't put up boundaries, there's resentment.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Resentment and like contempt and stonewalling, all that stuff starts to happen. Um, uh, I'm having another brain fart. I'm so sorry. um, yeah, that's kind of one of the things is like we agreed on like if I'm gonna ask something of her, like she gets to demand the same thing from me. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Yeah.
it's like if I'm gonna have to like, if she can't lean on me sometimes because I'm having a hard time, and I need her to respect that, even though I want to be there for her and I can't. Like, she gets to do the same thing if I'm having a hard time and I'm just like, and she can't. She's like, hey, I'm working on my test. I'm studying for something. I got this big thing coming up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't right now. Like, I have to recognize that, which is hard for me because that's a lot of like, almost feels invalidating. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. And
Yeah.
so I'm having to learn a lot of like just respecting that as well, you know?
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's been cool. It's been cool. It's crazy too, because like she is super stable, like very clear sense of like her identity, her values, what she believes in, how she acts. She's a responsible one in the relationship, you know. She has her own problems, don't get me wrong. I'll not disclose hers, but there is some like difficulty, some crossover with that. So our relationship can be hard because we can both be really symptomatic at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then sometimes it's like a recipe for disaster. um but what's really cool is, again, with the level of dedication, commitment, and like loyalty to each other, we do have the space to like make mistakes. So it's like I can be awful and then she can be awful, and then every night before we go to bed, it is something is resolved.
Yeah.
We've gone to bed mad like 2 or 3 times in like 7 years,
Yeah.
you know. um
Which
because we
I
just
think is one of the most generous things that you can give somebody. Like all these people who think that they're doing something great by being empathetic. I'd much rather like give me space to make my own mistakes. I'd rather have that like a million times over than, like the things that you want to give me and think that are like the things I want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna do this one more time, but then I may be done for now.
Nice.
Let's see. Let's see. That's funny. I wrote the other day, I was like, what the F do I ask? Because I was like, oh shoot, she wants to talk. Okay, we're cool, we're on. And then I like, oh, it's happening now. I gotta start writing stuff down.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, what is some of the stuff like? So are you still like actively working on like improving relationships in your life, or do you feel like you've kind of found a way to operate that's kind of works for you, or are you modifying it still? That may be kind of a silly question, but
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's kind of a good question. And it reminds me again of this, like the results of that Rorschach test that I was talking about with that other psychopath, because I saw like a lot of myself in some of the results. One of the things it said is that, like if they do seek out therapy, this type of person, then they're probably going to want to kind of like get a lot of bang without like a lot of work, a lot of results
mm,
with low effort. And I think that was my tendency, and it still kind of was like after, and they kind of said this, that they might be frustrated with the results of therapy are going slower than they would like, or like less advancement than they would like. And I think that's one thing that I've struggled with is sometimes it's easy to be like, okay, good, done. I graduated from therapy and now I'm good. I'm golden, right? I'm one of the good ones.
sure, yeah,
And I think I had like that tendency to be like, okay, now that I'm one of the good ones, it's other people's problem again. Now, like now I know it's your problem because I went to therapy.
I did that at first. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, otherwise my therapist would have told me, kind of, so like this weird confidence that was not was not related to like my actual, culpability in these situations. So I mean, I think again, sorry, meditation. I kept thinking intervention. That's not the word. Meditation was good for that because you can kind of like get a perspective. You can kind of like take a step outside of yourself again and kind of think about things. I think another thing that's been good for me is intuition. I'll just ask a question like, "Hey, is the problem them or is the problem me?" And often I'll get the answer me, and I still don't know what possibly could be the problem. It's clearly them. Like, why would you say that, intuition? You're lying. But then I'll kind of go through like this cycle of things. Is it this? Is it that? And like, so I've had like a lot of really good epiphanies that way. And I may even be kind of like an epiphany junkie. I finally have gotten to the place where and my family members kind of think this is kind of a weird Mormon cultural thing. But like there's like a kind of a saying in Mormonism like don't pray for like learning experiences because then your life will like go off a cliff, of terrible
Oh,
situations.
yeah, yeah.
But I told them the other day, I was like, no, I do pray for those. Like, I want the learning experiences. And they're like, "What? Like you basically invited the devil into your life is how they reacted. And they're like, wow, you're brave, and all these things. I thought I don't want to keep, if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm doing something stupid, I'm at the point where I want to be a little bit more aggressive. Not everything today, a little bit more aggressive than I have been about just learning the things that I've been wrong and stupid about because I don't want to keep doing the wrong and stupid thing over and over again. I'm at the point I guess where I'd rather have things be a little bit rough, in exchange for learning and like, finally cleaning up my act a little bit better about things that I've like let slide for way too long.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So there is some continuity that like there's some continued. Do you like seek out like through people if you can't quite decide what happened? Do you ever ask just like, hey, something about that didn't seem right to me? Can you like maybe with a family member, someone you're comfortable with, can you be like, hey, just can you paint the picture like just be blunt?
Yeah, I always try to. I mean, one of the best feelings in the world, I think, is to be on the same page with someone. And when you sense that you're not on the same page with someone anymore, they're angry with you, or you're not seeing this situation the same way. I always, maybe even almost to a fault, because sometimes there can just be conflict, and you don't have to be on the same page with everyone in order to still respect them and or love them, if there's somebody that you love. But I often ask them questions, be like, "Hey, can you like kind of walk me through, your feelings about this or your thoughts about this or, did I miss something? What's happening?" kind of
Yeah.
questions. I think questions, people like questions for the most part, or they sometimes I get this, I don't want to talk about it now. And it's like, okay. And sometimes I don't want to talk about it. They're like, hey, can I say this thing that like I'm something critical? And I'll be like, no, I'm like about to go to sleep. Like, I just think I get grumpy when I'm about to go to sleep. Really grumpy. So I think it's just not a good time. Like right before I go to sleep, let's just talk about it tomorrow. Yeah.
Do you experience that in your partnership a lot?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, luckily, I mean, she can get grumpy like right when she wakes up in the morning. And I just know to kind of be like, take things with a grain of salt that she says. She comes out of her bedroom. We sleep separately. And she's always saying, like, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. She just keeps repeating, don't say it. And that's like my clue that she's like grumpy.
Yeah.
Like, give her like 20 minutes.
it's, it,
Yeah.
that's funny. So, but then again, I imagine you make some room for that, like taking things with a grain of salt. You're like, you do that in the mornings, like probably don't mean that exactly or whatever. Can let things roll off a little bit more.
But
Um,
I'll say
awesome.
this, sometimes, like, because we are this way, because we have kind of these things, like, we do have to adjust. Like, I told her kind of recently, like, on vacations, like, let's take a pause on planning more vacations because I feel like we don't have a good enough, kind of understanding of how to handle each other's grumpiness or each other's kind of like tendencies, on these vacations. And like the vacations have like they're like a little bit risky. And I'm like, we have such a great relationship. Like we can just take like a year off of vacations and just go on separate vacations.
Right.
And until we figure out how to better do this rather than try to like ruin a good relationship or something. So I always think that's another thing I've learned from Nedra is, like you can maintain a relationship with anybody if you just kind of like scale back what you're doing with that person, how intertwined you are with that person. Like do you really have to, for instance, share the same bedroom? Some people do for whatever reason, and sure, but if it actually improves the relationship to not, then like why not do that?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I wonder, like, I really want to get one of those like German style, like the bed's connected, but just like right down the middle, it's separate.
Uh-huh.
Because like my wife feels like it's like like I don't want to be with her thing, but I'm like, no, it's just hot. It's uncomfortable. You pick, one of us picks the bed, you know, and I like it like this, you like that. Just convenience. Like
Yeah.
we could put the little thing in the middle every now and then, but like kind of want to sleep. And now with the room, is it AC? You like someone like the fan on more than the other, someone likes
Oh
the heat.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
she always likes it like super hot. I'm like, no, I'm dying.
That's just kindness then. That's just being
Yeah,
kind. My I have a family member, grandparents, they do that. They just sleep in
yeah.
separate rooms and it's like it's not weird, you know.
No, you get so much better sleep. I mean, depending on like what the situation is before, like we'll still share, like all sorts of whatever situations, like if like on a vacation or whatever. And yeah, it's just I don't
It's
know.
cute. It's cute when you're 20. After time with someone, you're like, I need a comfortable night's sleep.
Yes,
I love
exactly.
you. I
And
love
it's
you. But
crazy what like lack of sleep will do to a relationship is like, "Ugh."
oh yeah, it sucks because we lose days to being tired. We're like, man, we're just not going to come back from this. We need to just coast. We're going on autopilot. Do just as little as possible to get through the day with as little damage. It's damage control
Yeah, it is
sometimes.
damage control. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and that's sad though to lose entire days just because you're tired.
Yeah. You know, and I feel too sometimes with borderline personality disorder, I feel like sometimes it's a lot of what I'm doing is just damage control.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like very little, still not a lot of control over the initial emotions. So I feel kind of stuck with those, but I feel like I've been able to adapt my behavior a lot and
Yeah.
almost reframe the emotions a little bit and maybe temper it a little bit so it doesn't like cascade. So it can be like, hey, you know, they're mad at me. Unbearable thought and feeling for me most of the time.
Yeah.
But if I can be really quick and acknowledge that I probably did something that made them that way, and also understand that maybe this person doesn't really feel differently about me as a person,
Yes.
and that maybe they're just mad at this thing. And if I fix it, then it's fine and it'll be forgotten about, you know.
Mhm.
What I would used to do with that feeling is I would get that, then I'd figure out how to get back at them and be like, all right, well, why are you a bad person? I'm going to demonize you, and then I'm going to say, well, now I could even do more stuff to you because you're a bad guy now. I'm
Mhm.
going to have like mind blindness to your good qualities because you hurt my feelings, even though I did the thing to upset them. I won't
Mhm.
acknowledge. I'm like, you hurt my feelings, so now I'm going to make you a bad guy until there's this massive distance, which is why I have a hard time with work. I've done that with bosses, you know, as soon as a boss is like, hey, what the hell? Or even if they make a mistake, it's just so hard for me to like make them not a bad person in my head or not a, you know, damaging person.
Hmm.
So now I've gotten better at it and I can like be quicker to notice like my side of it, my behavior, and kind of, you know, just acknowledge it quicker.
Yeah.
And not because and the thing is too is the more I demonize someone or the more like trash talk or the more I make them try to seem smaller, the more regret and shame I would feel if I acknowledged it. So if I get on it quick, very little shame. If I hold on to it and now I've made my friend an enemy,
Yeah.
there's so much guilt. I almost have to stick to my guns, you know. Not
Oh,
have to, but
interesting.
you know what I mean. In my head, it's like,
Yeah.
no, I can't take this back. This is if I said that all this was my fault, the shame and embarrassment would be so much. No one they would tell somebody about it and no one would want to talk to me again. And it's like, you know, so sometimes I just stick to it. And I'm like, yeah, no, they were assholes. They were assholes. Like, yeah, that's not, and like that was a very common theme with me. And I struggle
Huh.
with it. I struggle with it. Um, I've been a lot better. I've been focusing on like long-term friendships. So I have people that I've like made my favorite person and then put back down or had an issue with. I've been making real attempts to like resolve those and then continue keeping that person in my life, even if they're not my favorite person, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's a lot of things that have improved. Um, and then one of the other things is kind of a newer realization is that like when I do that with the favorite person thing, I'm really good at making people feel good about themselves. Like I know how to kind of observe and see like just some quality in them that's like really impressive. Like, wow, you've gone through a lot. Like, you have some perseverance on you. Like, and you're still a pretty good person. Like, you do this thing for your grandma. You've been helping your sister with this. Like, you're a like, you're pretty amazing. Like, I kind of I respect that a lot, you know, and just little things like that when someone's feeling down change their whole day, you know. And when
Yeah.
my favorite person, I kind of obsess. So I'll learn so much about them. I can put myself in their shoes really easy, you know. And so then I'm like, well, they would probably think this. And so I can just like, it's almost like I have a sixth sense for addressing issues with that person. I can kind of comfort them without them even need to say, they don't need to say anything. And it happens rapidly. So this like relationship will develop over a week and a half, you know, very short amount of time. And then I think what happens is if I see some quality I don't like, and I kind of take them off their pedestal, it's probably really damaging people.
Yeah.
They probably feel, I don't get a lot of feedback on this, but I think people feel like abandoned. Probably make people feel abandoned, make them feel like they did something wrong, probably ghosted, you know,
Yeah.
if they don't forget any like follow up as to what happened, you know. I wonder too how common that is with BPD. I would imagine probably pretty what is that? There's like a book called like I Hate You, Don't Leave Me.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of I think what I'm talking about, you know.
Yeah.
So I have to go to the bathroom really bad, and then I
Do you
have
want
some
to
phone.
just, yeah, wrap up here and then we'll maybe like meet up again in a couple months or something and chat again?
Amy, I had such a good time talking to you. We can talk anytime you want to talk. I'm game anytime.
Absolutely.
So you'll see me. I'll probably be bugging you on Twitter. Probably
Nice.
be commenting. Also, yeah, I am an artist. I was gonna wait till the end to say anything about it. So anyone watching, if you are interested in what I do, I'll just put some stuff in the comments for you to look at. Um, and then yeah, I think that'll be it. I'm really happy with this. As I go through some more therapy and stuff too, it'd be kind of cool to come back with some follow-ups and catch up and see what's happened since, you know, between now and then. So
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on, for your honesty, for your willingness to share. I know that it's like if there's like anything that's kind of difficult to share or something, well, I'll just put it this way, you know, like when I was like writing my book, you know, I kind of knew like, and in fact, I think one of the reviews said this, that I like demonized myself. Sometimes it can feel like we're doing that. And I don't think that most people have the courage to like admit certain things that they know, you know, like this is not a good thing. This thing I did was wrong. You know, like I can see how people will take this and be like, wow, that was a real baddie thing that you did or something. But it's it's tricky because it's part of the disorder, you know, that is part of like it is a symptom of the disorder. And like to not kind of share that is to share like a partial picture. And you didn't ask for the disorder. I didn't ask for my disorder. We're both just trying to manage it as best we know. But I really appreciate you sharing your openness, your honesty, because I feel like I hope it does humanize the disorder for both of us. I appreciate that about you.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for being thankful.
Uh-huh. All right, we'll chat soon.
Bye.
Laters.